Viewing Whirlpool Country from the top of Isengard's tower, Naruto realized he had a lot of material to work with because the third Hokage was still far from retiring and the country had been destroyed when his parents were Genin. Almost everything that was broken in his mother's homeland needed to be fixed, including the buildings and the fields. Now that the army was spawned below, Naruto had the strength, power, and resources to make it all happen. The fact that the orcs, elves, and Uruk-hai all remembered how to follow his instructions as if it were second nature was one of the things Naruto ensured about his spawning pool. His soldiers knew how to forge, build, fight, shoot arrows, wield swords, and basically blink. After confirming that every part of his body was undamaged, Naruto proceeded to ensure that everything he had brought from Middle-earth had arrived as well. He then started the process of implementing his ambitious plan for the elemental countries. First, his Nazgul needed a means of transportation, which naturally brought all 9 of their fallen beasts right away. If they were going to remain on the main continent of the elemental countries, they would also need horses. As a result of the extensive damage, various locations within Whirlpool had to be rebuilt and repaired while the elves went to work the forges creating their armor, weapons, and getting ready for the impending war. The orcs he spawned worked tirelessly to complete their portion since it was not yet necessary to produce them all in large quantities. The Uruk-hai were being produced more slowly than either the elves or the orcs. With Fire Country and Konoha falling first, it was important to make Whirlpool the start of the end for the various regions of the elemental countries in order to control the forest areas of his mother's homeland and ensure that the orcs don't take more than they require. He also spawned Ents at an average rate. While riding his fallen beast and waiting for Naruto to give him orders, the Witch King asked, "What do you wish us to do first, my lord?" Naruto saw the Witch King nod and take off high in the clouds so that no one could see him. "First, we need to find out what has changed in the last few years since I've been here, and I know the perfect person to give it to me. Go to Suna in Wind Country, seek out Sabaku no Gaara and tell him an old friend with 9 demon tails wishes to have a talk with his fellow brother," Naruto said. One of the orcs behind Naruto remarked, "The ports are almost finished, my lord. We will soon start producing the necessary ships to ride the seas." Before an elf showed him some of the weapons his kin had made, Naruto saw the orc bow and walk away. "Great, keep me updated on the progress," he said. The elf allowed Naruto to examine one of the swords the Namikaze had asked to be made like a samurai's, but with runes on the blade to detect bloodline users, similar to some blades the elves made to detect orcs back in Middle-earth. "These weapons were just finished. My lord, the vast metal ore laying underneath the earth of Whirlpool has allowed us to produce great quality weapons," the elf said. When Naruto saw the elf nod, he said, "Great, I expect a sheath for this one soon," and left to consider other options. Like his mate, who was silently ecstatic by this unexpected news and could already feel his return. Last night, Naruto had a pleasant dream in which he saw his vixen once more and informed her of the good news. When Hinata asked Naruto when he would come get her, he replied that it would be sometime because Konoha had made him a wanted man for the murder of Uchiha Sasuke when the time was right and her love had the resources to keep the Hyuga woman from being taken from them. Hinata knew Naruto would assist her in getting out of the leaf. The Nazgul, who was known as the Knight of Umbar, asked, "What do you wish of me, my lord?" "Yes, I want you and your brothers to fly around the elemental countries. I want you to find out which ones are in trouble, ones ready to be conquered in the future also. If you find any samples belonging to dragons, let me know, as I would like to have a few for the spawning pool, and increase our power," said Naruto as the other Nazgul got the order and take to the skies. The orc in charge of that project declared, "My lord, Weathertop is almost fixed." As Naruto saw the orc bow, he said, "Good, make sure an armory is built as an extension to it and an emergency supply depot hidden underneath just in case," and he followed instructions. Naruto descended to what he believed to be the tower's command area, where the Palantir was situated, and turned it on for reconnaissance in order to see what the Nazgul might overlook. Using it, he discovered that Gaara was Suna's cage, completing paperwork that his secretary had given him in an attempt to cover up her blush. Naruto grinned at that because he had assumed that Gaara would require his sister's assistance to transform her younger brother into a man after years of seclusion from the village's residents had rendered her oblivious to the female gender. Naruto switched the orb to Lightning Country and concentrated on finding another member of his family. He witnessed the critically wounded Nibi vessel Ni Yugito frantically escaping for her life. The Namikaze's blood was boiling at the sight of one of his sisters being hunted down like an animal by Akatsuki members who were pursuing her. Luckily, one of his Nazgul, the Dark Marshal, was close by, and Naruto gave the Ring Wraith the order to free the Nibi vessel from their grasp while murdering the 2 Akatsuki members. The Namikaze discovered the reason behind Naruto's discovery of a miserable woman in a palace in what he concluded to be Snow Country, as he continued to expand to other parts of the elemental countries. Marks from the leaf were covertly engraved on the hands or necks of the woman's advisors, indicating that they were bound to Konoha and prioritized the leaf's interests over those of the nation. Naruto recognized the woman as actress Fujikaze Yukie, but based on what he could hear through the palantir, these so-called royal advisors were referring to her as Princess Koyuki and obviously attempting to influence her to take actions that would benefit the leaf more than Snow Country. What shocked Naruto, though, was that the nation had changed its name to Spring Country instead of the way he remembered it. Hinata claims that when Tsunade gave Leaf Genin Team 8 and Genin Team 9 the task, a machine was utilized to bring that season to the nation. He had almost forgotten that nevertheless, it was evident that the Leaf had established a strong relationship with the nation following the mission and now held a significant amount of power there. If Whirlpool were ever to acquire the plans to build his own, the country's train system would be a great way to get around naturally. Naruto wouldn't accept it by force because he believed that they could be won through talks with the princess and even end up joining forces with her to rid the nation of those bureaucrats. Naruto saw that the Mist Village was finally stabilizing with their new Mizukage, so he redirected the Palantir away from Spring Country and concentrated on Water Country. A beautiful woman with red hair, whose figure could snap a man's neck when he turned his head to look at her, and then kill him in the process. She appeared to be dealing with the fact that her village was disintegrating as a result of the last Mizukage's rule and the things he did to undermine it prior to the successful coup d'etat copyright tat against him. There isn't enough time to fix all the pain in the world. Only a small percentage of the elemental countries were attempting to stop the cancer that humanity had caused, which had left them totally crippled. Naruto was aware that using his gradually expanding war machine to burn away this cancer and unleash an even more powerful evil was the only way to eradicate this evil. Through his war, the world would be engulfed in darkness and fire as the tumor that humans had created within their own species was eradicated to further end the hypocrisy this world had been subjected to for so long. Those who wanted to stabilize it would be treated with compassion and even given the opportunity to join his ranks. To make it happen, he first had to muster an army and provide them with capable generals to command them in combat. Luckily, Naruto had a number in mind, but he had to get them back and prove that his side was the victorious one first. Naruto would use the Ring of Power to show them, and then explain why it was better to be with him than to stand in his way. A few weeks later, Konoha, since its establishment hundreds of years ago by the various members of the Senju and Uchiha clan, as well as other clans joining forces with civilians to form the strongest shinobi village in all of the elemental countries. Konoha has been a hive of activity. However, due to rumors that the leaf was needed for assistance by merchants, foreign dignitaries, and potential clients, today was far busier than usual. There had been rumors that something was moving from the area east of Fire Country, which was where Whirlpool Country was and had been abandoned long ago. Many believed that someone was attempting to restore Whirlpool to its former glory, which led to the dispatch of spies from different villages. However, those spies were never heard from again, and their heads were discovered falling from the sky over the different villages they were from. The loss of their Nibi vessel, who was said to have been captured by the enigmatic force from Whirlpool and had greatly angered the Raikage, was another issue that was problematic, at least for Kumo. The man didn't care that two bodies belonging to the Akatsuki organization, which was made up of S-class missing nin, were discovered to be nothing more than ominous stains of the area where Ni Yugito was last seen. Kumo had only heard that the person who had taken the Nibi vessel had screamed so loudly that everything within 10 miles fled. The rumors that Sabaku no Gara had met the leader of this evil force in Whirlpool and that the Kazekage had a smile on his face that had terrified his older siblings the moment they saw it were even more unsettling, at least to Konoha, as they knew that Gara never smiled unless he was murdering a powerful persona after Naruto vanished at the Valley of the End 4 years prior. The fact that this smile was different from those smiles, however, was what truly alarmed them. Another rumor was that, on orders from their master in Whirlpool, horse riders dressed entirely in black were prowling the elemental countries in search of something or perhaps someone. Nobody knew what they were searching for, but they even went so far as to be close to Iwa in order to search, which led to the spread of rumors that Iwa was now working with them even though Iwa denied it. The rumors continued to circulate until everyone in the elemental countries was aware that a new, enigmatic force was emanating from Whirlpool. Overall, it was causing a great deal of anxiety among many, including the Fire Daimyo, and the man had instructed the Hokage to investigate. Jiraiya was then instructed by Tsunade herself to send some spies to Whirlpool, but as soon as they left, it appeared that the spies were immediately found, and their heads dropped from the sky onto the villagers. In order to identify the person in charge of this power and neutralize them before they posed a threat to Konoha, the councils had called for the formation of a recon force to travel to Whirlpool. However, Tsunade was unable to order it because historical evidence demonstrated that spies were brutally murdered and then had their heads chopped off shortly after leaving the Leaf to travel to Whirlpool. She also knew that any recon team sent there would suffer the same fate. Jiraiya's spy network about the Akatsuki also bothered Tsunade because they were now focused on this new Whirlpool player because two of their members were allegedly incapable of dying. The two members of the group who died were Hidan the Jashin fanatic from Yugakure and his partner, the undead Kakuzu from Takigakure, according to Jiraiya's own spy inside the Akatsuki. Both are supposed to be immortal for different reasons, so it's not an easy task. Knowing that was one of the side missions she assigned Jiraiya, who was now seated in the chair across from her in the Hokage's office, Tsunade asked, "Any luck in finding Naruto?" Jiraiya saw Tsunade nod her head and said, "No, the brat's been off the radar for 4 years now and unlikely to return anytime soon. How he's avoided us this long I will never understand. The kid shouldn't even be able to do anything since being in Konoha should have stunted his growth." Despite this, they both felt that something was wrong with the blonde and couldn't get rid of the thought that Naruto might have hidden his true strength. They didn't know how he got that, though, because the Sandaime had told them that their godson was being stopped from becoming a powerful shinobi the way they desired and that they had no reason to suspect their former sensei of lying. Perhaps the Sandaime did lie, but it was impossible because the elderly man was unable to assist their godson because he was confined to this desk most of the time completing paperwork. The man's very own secretary, who was inherited by Tsunade and detested Naruto, told her that the Sandaime was always on time to complete the enormous amount of legal paperwork that was intended to drown him for days on end with no way out. Why, then, do I feel as though something is missing? Jiraiya believed that Tsunade was thinking the same thing, and it was bothering her as well. Tsunade saw Jiraiya nod and put his spy network on it. "Find him Jiraiya, something in my gut tells me he's behind this. Jiraiya, someone like Naruto doesn't vanish for this long and not come back without learning a few tricks," she said. Jiraiya, who had been asked to assist with the modified cage bird seal and ensure that the girl's future husband could use it, said, "The Hyuga elders and Hiyashi are getting nervous. They wanted to perform the sealing on Hinata soon and send her to the fire country capital to her new husband by the end of the month. Now they're getting nervous in wanting to go through with it since there is no guarantee for her safety." Given the girl's love for Naruto and her knowledge that this marriage would destroy the Hyuga girl inside, Tsunade said, "I'll get in touch with the girl's future husband to see if he can set up protective transport detail with a few of our shinobi to put everyone at ease." Tsunade didn't care why should Hinata receive preferential treatment when she was denied the opportunity to be with her beloved. Perhaps she was being resentful, but Hinata's decision to give Naruto her heart didn't sit well with her, and she chose to end any chance of them being together by permitting this arranged marriage to take place. Seeing Tsunade's eyes harden, Jiraiya remarked, "Have you noticed the girl's mood changing? She's been noticeably happier recently, like she's been seeing someone in secret." Tsunade said, "I'll have some Enbu follow her and have Kurenai keep an eye on the situation, to ensure Hinata wasn't seeing Naruto and to find out if she was. Tsunade would then have to handle this on her own." 2 weeks later, Whirlpool, "It's finally time," declared Naruto, who had called in all of his Nazgul and his present group of generals because he knew he could not wait any longer to save Hinata. As he observed Naruto staring into the palantir and the carriage leaving the fire country capital for the Leaf to get there early to take Hinata once the sealing was complete, the Witch King asked, "You summoned us, master?" Naruto saw the Nazgul nod and make their way to their fallen beasts. "I have an important mission for you, one of the most important mission you will ever have in serving me. My Nazgul, get on your fell beasts. Fly to Konoha, and rescue my mate from the cruel life that is awaiting her should we do nothing. Go and hurry," Naruto said. Yugito asked, "What do you need us for?" as she watched Naruto gaze through the orb at the now beautiful Hyuga with Roshi and Han from Iwa by her side. "To give you a heads up that the armies will be moving out soon. We have one more to recruit to our ranks before we can. Until then, be ready to move out, and keep your wits about you," Naruto said, observing the 3 nods in recognition of the person he was referring to. After hearing the rumors about Taki, Roshi said, "She's not easy to find, much like her village," observing Naruto nod. As Naruto felt the ring of power pulsing once more and his anger over the fate of this world growing, he said, "True, but my Nazgul responsible for killing Kakuzu was able to learn of the village's location after extracting the information from the missing before he died, and made sure he understood what it meant to fight an agent of a demon." At Naruto's request, Han went to meet the Wave Daimyo and negotiate the terms so that he could see that not all people hated him. In an unrelated matter, the Wave Daimyo is willing to do trade with you, but we made sure the terms didn't specify weapons and anything people could use against us, Han said. He was correct. It's sickening to my eyes to see such an abuse of power and over the name of a bridge that Konoha wanted renamed after Uchiha Sasuke after his death at the Valley of the End, Naruto said, shifting the Palantir's focus to the two graves belonging to Zabuza and Haku, noting that both graves had not been disturbed. After all this time they have not forgotten me. I assume that you saw the bridge and they gave it my name? I brought hope to their part of the world, and do you know how the leaf repays them for not changing the name of it? After hearing these reports from Iwa prior to his departure with Han, Roshi stated, I heard the Uchiha turned traitor and planned to join Orochimaru. The leaf says Uchiha Sasuke planned to fight the Sannin in his weakened state to avenge the Sandaime. As the group stared at him in shock, Naruto laughed and said, Iwa's reports on the matter are the accurate ones. Who do you think killed the Uchiha in the first place? The former mercenary laughed as if it were a joke. So the bounty on you is legitimate. They have you labeled a traitor for killing the Uchiha and possibly siding with Orochimaru during the invasion of the leaf, Han said. I haven't laughed like that years. I was the most loyal shinobi the leaf had. I put up with their crap for years without even thinking of betrayal. When I learned the truth about my life, I trained myself to be strong enough to put down people like the Uchiha, and anyone else like him for good. In truth, it was the Leaf Village as a whole, who betrayed me, and my entire family on both sides. They have much to answer for, Naruto said in a ferocious voice at the. Han said, all the villages that wronged our brothers and sisters do, and Roshi felt the same wave of anger toward his own village. Naruto said, the only one that doesn't have to is Suna. They've repented for that and Gaara is now their cage there to be spared. After each of the three nodded, Yugito remarked, what about Kumo? Killer Bee is the Raikage's younger brother, as Naruto used the Palantir to direct attention to Kumo and Killer Bee's team training. Naruto asked calmly, but with a tinge of anger, was he abused? Yugito remarked, a few assassination attempts, a few beatings, but those were on the orders of the previous Raikage, and he made sure his brother wasn't treated harshly, as he watched Naruto consider his options. No harm will come to Kumo, but I won't have you return either, and give them any kind of information about Whirlpool that could bring about my destruction, Naruto said, understanding that once you swore allegiance to him, it couldn't be broken. Yugito declared, I understand my lord, knowing that her role was to serve Naruto faithfully and carry the secrets she knew to her grave. An orc handed Naruto the message to read, and the Namikaze grinned, knowing that the Ents would be one of his aces in the hole when it came time to use it. My lord, Captain Reyes has just sent me a message from his ship that they have docked at a discreet location, and the Ents have disembarked to head for Konoha to take up a key position there on your orders, the orc said. Naruto saw the orc bow and went off to do just that. Great, send a messenger bird to Captain Reyes to return. For now I'll need his ship to come back for further use, Naruto said. Can the Ents really get that deep into the leaf without anyone noticing? Han asked, knowing that many had attempted this in the past and that, with Suna's assistance, only Orochimaru had been the most successful in implementing such a plan during the Chunin exams. Knowing where to have the Ents position themselves so that they can attack the leaf, Naruto said, where they are heading, they'll blend right in, and by the time people realize they aren't Simple's trees it will be too late. Roshi, who knew better than to question Naruto, asked, but is the army ready? Because he didn't like leaving his new home defenseless and open to attack from the outside. They will be, Roshi, so don't worry, there will be plenty of my forces left here to defend Whirlpool should the need arise. The trick will be getting such a large force to Konoha in a short time and make sure there is a large enough clearing for them while making sure no one escapes for all four corners of the leaf, said Naruto, who knew that his timing had to be just right to succeed. Yugito asked, what of your spies within the leaf? Can they be trusted? Because she had a significant role to play in this conflict with the leaf, which is why she was coming along and implementing her portion of the plan. Naruto said, I don't doubt them. When my elf approached them in secret and told them who was running things in Whirlpool, they immediately asked to join me. When my elf asked them why he should tell me of their offer, they said the village had become weak, full of arrogance, and went against everything it once stood for. Ages ago. They know the workings of the leaf almost as well as I do, and while their rank doesn't give them access to key places, I'd like they can cause the necessary distraction to do it in other ways. Roshi and the other two approached the orb and said, time to see what the leaf will do and how they will react to the Hyuga heiress being taken from them. As the three watched the drama play out in front of them and what would be regarded as the beginning of the end, Naruto exclaimed, his smile savage, it should be quite amusing. Konoha. Right now, as she went about the leaf doing her usual activities and spending time with her favorite people, Hinata didn't need her Byakugan to know that Anbu was currently watching her from the rooftops above. The people she was with merely pretended to like Naruto, but ultimately did nothing to support him and instead rejoiced in his departure. So at least they pretended to like him. She was among the few individuals in the Leaf who may have secretly lamented Naruto's departure 4 years prior and wished that things had not turned out as badly as they did now. Hinata had discussed this with the Hokage and didn't want to be with a man who was already so old that he was Tsunade's father. I'm definitely making sure I don't flee from the life that will await me if Naruto-kun doesn't find a means to get me out of here, she thought. For what purpose? Influence and political power to have a child who will resemble the man she would have to sleep with after having the seal applied to her forehead. She'd rather die. Hinata told Tsunade something, but the woman merely told her to move on from Naruto, who was a traitor to the Leaf and a monster. Hinata had retorted that the Leaf had betrayed him, citing instances of his mistreatment, and questioned why Naruto hadn't left sooner as a result. Tsunade had given the Hyuga girl a resentful glance in the Hokage's office, Hinata, and now she realized how deeply ingrained it was in the woman. From lover to younger brother, Tsunade had lost nearly everything, and Kushina was the final nail in the coffin of tolerance. Tsunade didn't care if Naruto was Kushina's son because she didn't have any kind of relationship with him. As a result, she left to let all the resentment fester while ignoring the duties of being a godparent, which Kushina had ironically charged the Slug Princess with in the event of death. Tsunade had disregarded the duty of raising Naruto because she thought it would be best to exact revenge on the cosmic forces and Kyuubi for plotting to ruin her happiness. If Tsunade was unable to lead a happy life, why should Naruto be able to have what she was unable to have in the Leaf? The fact that Tsunade would allow her own resentful heart to ruin what could have been a loving, familial bond with Naruto in order to exact bitter, pointless retribution against something she couldn't see had shocked Hinata greatly. Furthermore, if it was within her power, the woman would have attempted to ruin any relationship Naruto might have had. As 9 black-robed figures on strange winged beasts flew down around Hinata, a loud, soul-piercing shriek suddenly filled the air throughout Konoha, frightening people into hiding and even causing shinobi to seek cover in case they were caught in the creature's claws. The Nazgul swooped around her, tearing off large chunks of roofs, snatching shinobi and dropping them from deadly heights. If not hurling a group through buildings, Hinata was the only one who wasn't scared because she had been anticipating them since her last conversation with Naruto in the dream world and had jumped up to a nearby roof where the Witch King of Angmar was waiting for her. When the Witch King of Angmar held out his armored hand and said, "My lord has sent me to take you to him," Hinata accepted it without question. Hinata said, "Then I will not keep him waiting any longer," as she mounted the fallen beast and Anbu emerged on the nearby rooftops. The Anbu captain yelled, "Stop where you are," as the squad surrounding him produced their weapons. The Witch King exclaimed, "Don't get between a Nazgul and his objective," as his fallen beast suddenly struck, biting off a portion of the Anbu captain's side before taking to the skies as the former king of men in the Middle-earth realm screamed in fear for everyone to hear. They chased the 9 ring wraiths and halted when they had flown high into the clouds so they could follow after him. "Don't let him take the Hyuga," exclaimed another Anbu. Office of the Hokage. A moments later, Tsunade, now completely furious at the way things transpired with these winged creatures and their riders making fun of her village, asked, "What do you mean they took her?" "It's just how we said it happened, Hokage-sama. We were watching Hyuga Hinata per your orders when they came from above on their winged beasts. They picked up shinobi and civilians before dropping them from high above or threw them into buildings. They weren't already damaging our Anbu commander has a large portion of his side now missing due to the winged beast biting it off," and the Black Rider said, "Don't get between a Nazgul and his objective before taking Hyuga Hinata away," said the Anbu lieutenant as the Hokage's eyes narrowed as he spoke. As soon as the group left, Tsunade yelled, "Get Jiraiya in here now." She was furious inside before Jiraiya entered through the window. After noticing the woman's irate expression, Jiraiya said, "This is about Hyuga Hinata being taken, isn't it?" and came to the conclusion that he had done so. "It's Naruto, he's back, Jiraiya, I'm sure of it. There is only one person Hinata would even think of betraying the Leaf for, and he's made contact with her through those dark things." Tsunade slammed her fist against. "What do you want to do?" Jiraiya asked, observing the woman poised to harm something. "Spies won't get us into Whirlpool and we don't even know just how strong the defenses are even if we send an assassination team," she said. "Or someone. That's why we're going to send a well-trained recon team to see what the hell is going on in Whirlpool. Send Neji with Kurenai, Kiba, Shino, and Lee just in case we need assault experience with Shikamaru to help him plan a proper strategy to oppose Naruto after seeing what he's doing there," Tsunade said as Jiraiya nodded and team. Now that Naruto had initiated contact, it was her turn. "Isengard Whirlpool," Hinata exclaimed, "Naruto-kun." As she hurried to embrace him, the two then shared a passionate kiss. As the others watched intently, Naruto said, "Hinata-chan, I've missed you so damn much." Before giving her another kiss, this was the first time two lovers had been together for years. Hinata said, "Me too." Dreams paled compared to this moment, as she continued to kiss him without hesitation. "Shall we go somewhere more private?" Naruto asked, observing the girl blushing now from the attention they were receiving and the implications he was conveying. When he picked her up bridal style, Hinata exclaimed, "Yes, let's go. I've waited too long for this moment, my love," and made her way to the master bedroom. Naruto gave the three demon vessels a look that warned them that hell would be unleashed if anyone interrupted them. "Same here, don't disturb us or else," he said. Naruto placed Hinata on the big bed as soon as the two lovers entered the room, but the girl beneath him quickly dragged him down onto it. In order to give their other half pleasure, the two started kissing, stroking, feeling, touching, groping, and probing each other with their hands, with Naruto's hands now playing with Hinata's breasts after taking off her bra, and one of the Hyuga girl's hands reaching to the young man's boxers to feel the hard appendage down there swelling with male pride. Their clothes were soon thrown on the floor all around them, leaving them in nothing but their underwear. Hinata said, "Make love to me please," because she could take it no more and could tell by his behavior that he couldn't either. Naruto said, "Gladly," as he teased her nipples, kissed her breasts, and enjoyed Hinata's howls of pleasure. Naruto moved southward, took off the girl's wet underwear, and started licking that spot as if it were the last day. When Hinata called out Naruto's name, her body erupted in pleasure, and she took hold of his head with her hands while pressing his face between her thighs. "Office of the Hokage," Kiba said, "Are you sure about this, Hokage-sama?" "Naruto? The dead last? I mean, it sounds so far-fetched." Kiba didn't think Naruto was responsible for this, despite his bizarre 4-year disappearance following the Uchiha's murder. As Tsunade saw the group frown and sensed their newfound rage towards Naruto, she said, "Yes, I'm sure you baka. What's more, is Hyuga Hinata went with the shadowy rider of that creature to take him to Whirlpool, and is undoubtedly doing horrible things to her. I want you to find out what things are like in Whirlpool, where Hyuga Hinata is, and rescue her should the opportunity be open to you." Kurenai asked, "When do you want us to leave?" Because she wanted her student back and was going to hold Naruto accountable. Tsunade watched them nod, then immediately depart to get ready. "Immediately. Be careful all of you, there is no telling what Naruto will do to you if caught," she said. After observing Tsunade shake her head no, Jiraiya asked, "Are you sure you don't want me to go with them? I need you here. I won't send my best shinobi in our ranks to Whirlpool without a proper recon of the area. I know you've been there before, Jiraiya, but Naruto could easily change things while there with whatever it is he's unleashed upon the world, and sending you in with knowledge of terrain over 2 decades old is not smart," said Tsunade when he noticed that the Sannin. "I just hope they make it back alive. None of my spies could get in and they were some of my best," Jiraiya said, aware that his network's spies would no longer accept any Whirlpool-related jobs subsequent to the loss of many of them. Tsunade said, "Me too. When Hinata is brought back, make sure the seal works and make sure it makes her suffer extra for this betrayal," after observing the Sannin nod. "After 4 days, Whirlpool," Kurenai said, "remember, we need to be quiet as possible, and not make a sound," as she landed on one of the Whirlpool beaches, miles from the closest port, using a genjutsu to navigate through the enormous fleet of ships. As the group moved to the trees to hide in the shadows, Kiba asked, "Where do we look first?" They noticed various animals that had never been seen before moving about. Shino pointed to the tall tower that hummed with power and greatly alarmed his bugs. "That tower," he said. Shikamaru remarked, "Troublesome number, doubt he's keeping Hinata there," after observing the Hyuga girl's sensei grow irate. Kurenai's hands turned into fists and she was itching to face Naruto. "If he's defiled her in any way, I'll kill him myself, and do it in such a way he'll beg for hell before I'm done," she exclaimed. When a warg on an orc emerged from the shadows beneath the tree the leaf shinobi were on, the warg sniffed around before growling, and the group leader's other choice words were silenced soon after. More orcs on wargs emerged from the shadows to watch the orc use the gift that their master had given them to converse with its pet. The orc told the others, "We have intruders, my pet smells them, they're near. We should report this to Lord Naruto, he hates uninvited guests." "Monad," said another orc, who had jagged-edged teeth and piercings over his eyes and down his left cheek. Monad, with his back to the leaf shinobi in the trees, said, "We can't notek, not yet. Lord Naruto and his new mate do not want to be disturbed," feeling the killer intent from the tree behind him for a brief moment before it disappeared. In their native tongue, which all orcs and elves knew, along with their genetic memory skills, another orc said, "They're behind Monad in the trees. We must go now before they suspect we know what is going on. Let them come in close, then block their retreat, and capture them for Lord Naruto to decide their futures." To give the impression that the three were fighting, another orc said, "Come on, quit your yapping, we'll speak to the 4 generals of Whirlpool for now about this matter," which persuaded them to speak to the superiors before the warg riders departed for Isengard. Kiba wished Akamaru was with him, but he decided against it because the dog was too big to hide and was no longer puppy size. "Damn. Those dog-like creatures picked up our scent," Kiba said. With the group nodding in agreement, Kurenai stated, "We must continue with the mission no matter what. We need to gather information about Naruto's operations and what he has planned for the elemental countries." Shino said, "We'll move to the left of the tower. My bugs have told me of a lookout area on top of a hill where we can look at a large portion of Whirlpool, and is not occupied just yet," as the group nodded and made their way there. Lee asked what everyone was thinking and wanted answers to all the questions that were running through their minds. What were those creatures on those strange dog-like creatures? "I've never seen anything like them before," he finally said. Kurenai expressed her disgust at the boy Hinata had so foolishly given her heart to, despite everyone's warnings about his demonic connections to the Kyuubi. Something Naruto created, maybe some kind of experimentation like Orochimaru using his demonic chakra to twist humans to being what they are now, Kurenai said. Kiba received a negative vibe from the group and was afraid of what would happen if they were permitted to breed outside of Whirlpool. "That would explain those dog-like creatures, they seemed unnatural in a way," he said. As Shikamaru continued to feel as though there were eyes everywhere, he said, "There is something about this place that feels unnatural, like it's almost alive, yet it's not, and I keep getting the feeling we're being watched." It was unnerving to have such a feeling of complete nervousness running through his entire body. Neji used the power of his Byakugan and saw an amazing amount of demonic energy emanating from the tower. "I know what you mean, Shikamaru. My eyes show me lots of movement all around Whirlpool, with creatures like we saw earlier making weapons, and others that look human but have distinct features that show they aren't. Then there are strange creatures I'm seeing that are moving heavy things and can really throw their weight around like an Akamichi could in a fight based on muscle power," Neji said. The group ventured to the enormous hilltop where Weathertop's rebuilt fortress now stood, as troops would soon occupy it following the installation of an underground supply depot and armory attachment. Although it appeared to be too simple for them to reach this point, they swiftly ascended the hill while remaining hidden from the sporadic orcs and elves in the vicinity. These Naruto-serving creatures were aware that there were intruders in Whirlpool, but they did not rush to locate them. They were not pursued by a sizable force, scouts, or pretty much anything else. From his perch atop the hill, Kiba exclaimed, "Something is wrong, something is very, very wrong," as he felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end and his instincts begged them to leave Whirlpool immediately. Yugito said, "No shit, Sherlock," as he left Weathertop, and Han, Roshi, and Fu followed suit after spotting the group of Leaf Shinobi. Kurenai said, Your knee Yugito from Kumo. It's been said you hold the Nibi." She was afraid Naruto would seek allies, but she never thought he would go to Kumo or Iwa, based on the 2 men to Yugito's right. Why was a Taki Shinobi present? Were they not Konoha's allies? Was there anything Naruto promised them in return for their cooperation? Got in one. Next to me is Roshi, next to him is Han, and then there is Fu. In case you haven't been keeping up on current events, Roshi and Han are both from Iwa. They left to seek life away from the arrogance of the human race and their negativity while they learned to master the demons inside of their bodies. Fu here was hated by the people of Taki, used like a watchdog outside her village, and was given scrapes to feed off of before Naruto sent one of his Nazgul to offer a place here in Whirlpool. He did the same for me after I was pursued by those 2 undead weirdos wearing those red cloud-covered cloaks and straw hats, said Yugito, seeing the Junin scowling at the 4 of them while the rest of the Leaf team stayed on guard. "Not good. The weakest of the 4 demon vessels can easily kill us, while the others are also of unknown strength when combined in a specific manner. Each is equivalent to the 9 tails," Shikamaru thought. Definitely not good, because although these 4 might be able to compete with Naruto, they owed him too much to refuse the Namikaze's hospitality. As for your group, however, Naruto-sama has a policy regarding uninvited guests, and I'm pretty sure the Leaf knows all about that along with the rest of the shinobi villages trying to spy on Whirlpool, Han said, noticing that the Leaf shinobi were now tense. Neji, who wasn't going to be defeated easily, asked, "So you're going to kill us and then send back our heads? And inflicted some harm on them?" "No, I'm not," said Naruto, who was now accompanied by Hinata and was dressed in a royal kimono that had survived Whirlpool's initial death and that he had managed to repair for her. Kurenai exclaimed, "Monster," as she swiftly went over hand signals and used her genjutsu to make Naruto appear to be chained to a tree while the Leaf Junin held a kunai in her hand to cut open his throat. With a flare of his chakra, Naruto threw the woman off his back as if she were insignificant, saying, "Don't be so dramatic." Kurenai rose from the ground, But Hinata's devastating gentle fist attack left her momentarily paralyzed. The Leaf Shinobi could only watch in horror as her former pupil approached Naruto and planted a kiss on his lips. It was blasphemous. The woman realized what had happened since the Hyuga girl had been in Whirlpool. When Kurenai noticed that Hinata had changed in appearance, she appeared lean and muscular, and she had fox ears on her head. Neji exclaimed, "Hinata," because he was shocked to see his cousin supporting Naruto, and yet she was actually doing just that. "Why are you so surprised? I love Naruto, he is my other half. I refuse to be put in an arranged marriage with a man old enough to be my grandfather just for my clan to one day receive political favors. You know what I'm talking about, Neji, what our clan was planning to do to me just to appease that pig. They wanted to be my so-called husband. They even had Jiraiya make an alternate version of the cagebird seal just so that old bastard could use it, so I don't refuse him when it's time to help make a baby. I would have thought you of all people, Kurenai-sensei, would despise such an act, but if it means I'm not with Naruto, then all thoughts of disgust on the subject don't matter, and to hell with what the woman herself wants," said Hinata, looking at Kurenai. The angry woman fighting the paralysis was involved in. Kurenai tried to communicate with Hinata by saying, "He's a monster, Hinata, he's a demon." Naruto said, "Of course I am now anyway. The energy we released after I killed the Uchiha sent me to a realm, and upon entering had turned me into the new Kyuubi," as the Leaf Shinobi gave him a startled look. Lee asked, not believing what Naruto was saying, "So you've been transformed into Kyuubi after what happened?" "Yep, and now I'm not the only one, as Hinata has become my mate, and turned into my sexy vixen to rule by my side," Naruto said, with his mate blushing in response. Kurenai yelled, "Defiler! I'll castrate you for tainting my student's mind and body," as Yugito kicked her in the face and then pressed a heavy foot against her stomach until the Junin cried out in agony. "Shut your mouth. People like you sicken me to no end. Hating us because we're different regardless of the fact the shinobi villages made us in the first place. How can you hate your own creations? Your own weapons of war you forge just to use whenever the need arises before casting aside when it's all over. If being human means being like you, then I'd rather become a demon just like the one inside of me, and not turn back for anything," Yugito said as the pressure mounted and heard Kurenai scream with agony. Naruto walked towards the group of Leaf Shinobi who were now getting ready for battle. "As for the rest of you, it seems my message to the shinobi villages wasn't clear enough when they sent spies onto my country, and spying on what is going on in my lands, so I think a more impactful statement is required to teach the Leaf a lesson, and you're going to help me do it," he said. In an attempt to avoid betraying Konoha, Lee declared, "We'd rather die." Naruto said, "I was so hoping you'd say that," and then he snapped his fingers, causing the illusion he had created to vanish behind him and reveal more than 100 fully armored elves pointing arrows at them. Shikamaru turned around and saw more elves below the hill, ready to shoot if they attempted to jump. "Holy crap," he exclaimed. "You have no chance of escape. The elves have deadly accuracy when it comes to firing arrows. Without equal, a single elf could fire arrows at all of you the instant the muscles in your bodies telling you to move twitched before they stopped that very same action from happening," Naruto said, observing Shikamaru currently figuring out every possible plan of action in order to escape Whirlpool alive. Shikamaru remarked, "So what you're saying is, we're going to die here, and there is nothing we can do to stop it," after observing Naruto smile and nod. Naruto saw Shikamaru shake his head no, and he said, "You really didn't think I was going to let all of you out of here alive to tell everyone what is going on, did you? Even if we could get away from you, your 4 generals, this army of elves behind us, and the one in front there is still the matter of getting to our boat to row through the army of ships there, not to mention those black riders on those winged beasts. You have us in checkmate," Shikamaru said as the Leaf team gazed at him astonished. Naruto grinned and said, "I'm glad you see it that way, Shikamaru." Before directing the elves behind him to fire, they did so with lethal accuracy, striking the group from the Leaf with their arrows. They were on the ground dead, save 2 Hyuga, Neji and Yuhi Kurenai. Neji coughed up blood and looked at Naruto's red-eyed face as he glared daggers at him, while Hinata followed suit. "Why you spared me?" "Why?" Neji asked. "You planned to give Hinata the death blow for defying her so-called fate in losing to you, so it's only fair that I return that in my own way." "Spared you? How insulting. I didn't spare your life, Neji. I'm simply returning the same amount of compassion you gave Hinata at the Chunin exam prelims, or have you just forgotten about that?" Naruto said before lifting his steel-toed boot and slamming Neji's skull hard against the ground. Kurenai exclaimed, "You bastard. His debt was paid after you beat him in the Chunin exam finals." Just before Yugito gave her a hard enough kick to the ribs to roll her closer to him. "His debt to me? Fool. He owed his debt to Hinata. She's bent over backwards to make Neji's life happy at the expense of her own since they were little kids. Even after the mess between us was settled at the Chunin exam finals, he still treated Hinata with contempt and disgust, like she was lucky to have someone fight on her behalf. When he heard what was going to happen with her being arranged to a marriage with that old pig, Neji did nothing offer condolences for such a life, and no doubt secretly loved the idea of his cousin suffering in a way to get back some form of clan honor. He lost when his dad died. Neji owed Hinata his life and he was long overdue in paying up what was owed, stated Naruto prior to his beasts to share their findings. After observing Naruto nod in agreement, Monad turned to face the bodies of the deceased Leaf Nin. All of us have rechecked all of Whirlpool, my lord, no more intruders to be found, he said. After turning to face those corpses, Naruto turned to face the wargs, who appeared somewhat insatiably hungry for some fresh meat. After the elves had purged the bodies of everything of value, Naruto pointed to the dead Leaf Nins and said, "Great. As for your wargs, I bet they're hungry after all this scouting, and deserve a good meal for their efforts. Dig in." Kurenai exclaimed, "Monster," before Hinata's foot forced her to kiss the dirt with her face. Before pushing Kurenai's head sideways, Hinata remarked, as if the Leaf's treatment of Naruto-kun was any better, "How many Inuzuka dogs hunted Naruto down just for the fun of it in order to rip through his flesh? How many adults like you let his happen and laughed at his expense? Well, who's laughing now? It's not so funny, is it?" This allowed her to observe the wargs consuming her ally's flesh. "The question now is what to do with you," Naruto asked, his eyes calculating the possibilities as he looked at Kurenai. Kurenai boldly proclaimed to Naruto, "I'm not afraid to die. Your time of judgment will come soon enough, monster." Her words were rewarded by Hinata's foot pressing her deeper into the ground. "Die? Oh, you misunderstand, Yuhi Kurenai. We're not going to kill you. At least, not yet anyway. I want you to bear witness to my grand scheme of things when I crush Konoha beneath my feet. I want you to see with your own two eyes just how far I will go to crush the Leaf for their betrayal of my family, just like you did all those years ago when I was 6. You remember that day, don't you? You were a recently made Chunin, if I recalled that day correctly, who was assigned by the Sandame to watch me in my apartment, and given a specific knock sequence to indicate it was you at door. Only when I opened the door to greet you that day, it wasn't your face I saw, but rather that of Sarutobi Asuma, and a mob of people ready to take chunk of flesh out of my ass. I barely got away after jumping through my own window and making it to the Sandame's office before Asuma got to me. Of course he nearly did, but I ducked at the last moment, and gave him a good mule kick to his nuts for trying to slice me in two," said Naruto, seeing Kurenai's shocked face. Kurenai bitterly recalled how Asuma had asked her out on a date in return for the knock sequence his father had given to the then Chunin so he and the mob could kill Naruto. "That's why he called off our date. You ruined our relationship for a good month," Kurenai said. She was preparing for her date that evening when she discovered Asuma was in the hospital, unable to leave due to the low blow Naruto had delivered to him, and currently urinating blood. Kurenai attempted to exact revenge on Naruto for that, but the Sandame summoned her to his office before she could track down the brat and demanded an explanation for how Mob was able to figure out the unique knock sequence he gave her. Kurenai realized her career and Asuma's were in danger when she was unable to provide a suitable response. Asuma had been transferred out to be one of the 12 guardian ninjas, and she had been punished with innumerable degrading D-rank missions. She also made sure that the two were kept in check until the Hokage felt that they could be even close to Naruto. Hinata growled at her former sensei and was tempted to crush the woman's skull the way Naruto had crushed Neji's. "You betrayed Naruto-kun for a measly date? You barely knew that cig-smoking baka back then?" she exclaimed. "He was a Sarutobi, the son of the Sandame. Any woman turning him down for a date would have been crazy," Kurenai said. Although she felt shallow at the time, this was the norm for girls in that era, and she felt that no other man could be with her after Asuma left. This led to her portraying herself as the Ice Queen, until Asuma returned and they made the decision to date covertly. Naruto remarked, "Pathetic, just like those fangirls. The Uchiha had always fawning over him because he was the last Uchiha in the Leaf," before making a hand gesture to call 2 elves to his side. "Your order, my lord," asserted the elf upon observing the 2 elves nod. Naruto said, "Bind and throw this one into the dungeon. Assign someone to feed her, but make sure the hands stay bound, and feet immobile until we're ready to mobilize the army." He swiftly bound the woman and carried her away to the underground dungeon setup near Isengard. Knowing that the war with the Leaf was unavoidable, Han said, "The Hokage will eventually realize her team failed and suspect the worst." As he left with Hinata by his side, she could see the rage in his eyes. "I know the Hokage will. I know how she thinks. I know how the Leaf in general thinks better than they do themselves. Prepare the army. I want them to reach the beaches of Fire Country in 3 days and not a minute later," Naruto said. Knowing that the anger of their former home was eating him up inside and that nothing short of burning it to the ground would ease his pain, Naruto said, "Calm yourself. My love, the element of surprise is in our favor. By the time the Hokage suspects the team she sent here has been caught and killed, we'll be in position to lay siege to Konoha." Naruto said, "I know my love, just memories of the past catching up to me. I hate those memories," as he lowered his head to lightly touch Hinata's. Hinata smiled at him and Naruto gave her a devilish smile. "I hate those memories too. I would rather make new ones with you in bed," Hinata said. "Really? I didn't think you were so anxious to get pregnant so soon, my naughty little vixen," Naruto said, pointing out that they had been mating a lot over the last few days and that she would soon be pregnant. Hinata felt Naruto's hand on her butt and gave her a good groping that made her shiver. "Aside from that wonderful dream I've had for ages becoming true, I just want to enjoy every second I have with you, and soothe our aching hearts that have been apart for too long," Hinata said. Naruto smiled at Hinata and the Hyuga woman smiled back. "Then let's not delay such a thing any further. My generals can handle the preparations with the army for now, and I can always send a message to Gaara later before we head off to Fire Country," Naruto said. Office of Konoha Hokage. 5 days later, when Tsunade saw Sabaku no Gaara sitting opposite her in his case-cage robes, wearing a neutral, emotionless mask that rendered him completely unreadable, just as he had been at the Chunin exams 4 years prior, she said, "Case-Cage-sama, I thank you for speaking with me after I got your message regarding information about Whirlpool, and what you've managed to learn about their plan to attack Konoha. It wasn't easy acquiring this information, as I lost quite a few of my spies and shinobi to acquire what I sent you," Gaara said, making sure to make the salt on the wounds the two villages had between them sting. "Despite what has happened 4 years ago, we do have an alliance with each other, and it should be honored." Although Gaara may respect the partnership between the two shinobi villages, his true allegiance was to Naruto and the support the Namikaze provided him in the past. Gaara had regained his humanity, his family, and the respect of his own village 4 years ago thanks to Naruto, who prevented him from becoming a monster that would have returned to haunt them before their unavoidable demise unbeknownst to the other elemental countries. Naruto had also saved his life by assisting him in thwarting 2 Akatsuki members who were attempting to find him in search of his demon. "I understand, Case-Cage-sama. I myself have lost shinobi and spies at the hands of Whirlpool forces, so I understand your pain." Tsunade grinned. Gaara simply nodded, and the Hokage pondered whether the younger Cage in front of her was aware that Naruto was the Whirlpool leader. Should she tell him at all? No, the alliance between the two villages might break down if she did, and Suna would turn against the Leaf. She could not afford to risk it. Tsunade was taken aback by this, but she didn't anticipate that the Case-Cage would plot to turn on her and support the enemy. "From what I've learned, the leader of Whirlpool is preparing a large army to invade Fire Country and attack Konoha. As soon as such, I have placed my forces at key strategic areas around Konoha to further strengthen its defenses and help defend your village from any kind of invasion," Gaara said. Even if Naruto was the enemy without realizing it, Tsunade at least hoped Gaara was unaware that it was Naruto. He shook his hand and watched Gaara leave her office. "Thank you for your help, Case-Cage-sama. With your help, I know we can stop this plan by the leader of Whirlpool and repel their invasion," Tsunade said. "I think such a result is unlikely," Gaara thought as he had to tell his siblings about it and suppress the savage smile that wanted to show on his face. As this was going on, Tsunade called Jiraiya into her office, and the Toad Sage was giving this some serious thought. Naturally, Tsunade had Jiraiya use his spy network to see if the Case-Cage had any contact with Gaki after she suspected Naruto of being the leader of Whirlpool. The Toad Sanin discovered no such activity. It's highly likely that any communication that existed between Naruto and Gaara was either destroyed or non-existent. When Tsunade noticed Jiraiya sitting down to reflect, she asked, "What has your spy network told you about the other shinobi villages?" As Tsunade's eyes narrowed at this explanation, Jiraiya said, "Aside from the fact that most of them are pissed off at the loss of their own demon vessels. Nothing really. Iwa lost their 2 after they went rogue. Kumo lost 1 while the Raikage is closely monitoring the other, and I just learned Taki's own has taken off." Tsunade saw Jiraiya nod and knew that he knew their recon team had probably failed by now and that they had paid the price with their lives. "I want to this village mobilized and ready for to defend itself from enemy invaders." "He's coming, Jiraiya. Naruto's coming here with an army to crush us," she said. Ironically, one of its own was planning to write a dark chapter in the Leaf with the blood of its people, hoping it would be the final chapter in Konoha's history, and he would slam the book shut after its dramatic conclusion. A Chunin entered the room with a deathly terrified expression and exclaimed, "Hokage-sama! Hokage-sama! There is a fire outside of the village wall. In fact, all the sides of the village where there is vegetation are burning, a total of 500 feet. Tsunade commented, "What? get shinobi out there with the ability to use water jutsus to put them out, after realizing the man had more to express. We are, but the fire is unnatural, it's a bluish-black, almost seems to be alive, as several shinobi have been badly burned by it already for trying, and some have been killed by its consuming presence, said the Chunin as they observed Tsunade's. After observing the Hokage nod in comprehension, Jiraiya exclaimed, "It must be the Nibi vessel, that's the color of the demonic chakra she possesses," before hastily leaving her office to observe the severity of the weather outside. The Slug Princess's heart froze in terror at the sight of the flame and what was beyond it when she visited the Hokage monument to observe her surroundings. There was a huge army of non-human creatures behind the walls of Konoha. They were all heavily armored, carrying swords, spears, shields, spiked metal clubs, and bows with arrows ready to shoot. The fact that there was an army at every gate leading into Konoha, not just one, and that the more armored portion of the army was already calling for blood, made Tsunade even more terrified. In order to exact their own small amount of revenge on the Leaf, each side was led by a different general and consisted of demon vessels from various villages. And Naruto, accompanied by Hinata, was in charge of them. When Naruto saw his mate's eyes on Konoha, he asked, "What do you think, Hinata-chan? Should I give Tsunade a chance to surrender Konoha to me?" Hinata stated, "Might as well, Naruto-kun, though we both know she won't," fully aware that Tsunade would never, ever give Konoha up to Naruto in any way. Naruto gestured for the orc with the white flag to stand in the center, which would serve as a neutral location for their meeting, while nodding in agreement and making an effort to be polite in some ways. His generals were informed that their lord and the Hokage were meeting, so unless specifically instructed otherwise, no fighting was to start. Elves arrived with a table, 2 chairs for each side in case Tsunade brought someone along, and a tent to protect both sides from the sun. They also placed the metal pole with the white flag in the ground after Shizune was told to take over the hospital. Naruto soon saw Tsunade leaving with Jiraiya. Naruto remarked, "You came, I wasn't sure if you would, though I'm glad you did," after observing Tsunade's icy expression of rage. As Tsunade sat down, Jiraiya preferred to stand with his arms crossed and a frown on his face directed at Naruto. "You have a lot of nerve doing this, Naruto, after everything the Leaf has done for you. This is how you repay them, and me with this invasion," Tsunade said. "Yes, I am," Naruto said, observing the shocked expression in their eyes. "If by everything you mean hating, abusing, and making my life miserable while you two went to have your own fun while ignoring your godparent duties." Knowing that only one man could have told Naruto and that he was now dead, Jiraiya said, "The Sandaime told you, didn't he? When I was younger, I had just survived another day of my life I called hell. I had put up with enough of the Leaf's crap and he knew it. So after I learned the truth, I made him train me in secret, and everyone assumed he was too buried shin deep in paperwork to even realize the Hokage doing it was really a shadow clone. Of course, I had my skills to prevent people from learning how strong I really was, and used seals on my body that I learned to make everyone think I was weak. I released those seals when fighting Sasuke, as he was going to Orochimaru no matter what I did, and killed him for actions." Naruto looked at the 2 daggers. Tsunade slammed her fist against the table and yelled, "He could have been saved, you baka." She also noticed that the elves were preparing arrows at them from a good 200 feet away. When Naruto saw the woman closely examining the elves, he turned to Jiraiya, knowing that the man would protect Tsunade if necessary, even if it meant becoming a target in the process. Uchiha Sasuke was a traitor no matter how much ass-kissing the Leaf did to make him think otherwise, and I suggest you keep your temper in check, old hag. My archers are the best at what they do and they can pick a fly off your graying hair while keeping it alive in order to make it suffer a slow death, Naruto said. When Jiraiya finally saw Naruto grinning with laughter, she asked, "Why did you want to meet us here? For your own amusement? To gloat on how you've broken free of your leash?" Naruto saw the woman glaring daggers at him, and Jiraiya followed suit. "I asked Tsunade to come here to surrender Konoha and all of its people to me," Naruto exclaimed. In the hopes that Naruto would become enraged, slip, and give her the opportunity to slam his face clean off, Tsunade said, "Out of the question. I will never give Konoha to you whether you were a loyal shinobi or its enemy. The Leaf will never be yours. You can come at us with your army here, make demands, and threaten all you want, but, I will tell you right now that no son and daughter of the Leaf will ever submit to a foreign ruler, especially a filthy demon like you." Instead, Naruto's eyes glowed red with intense bloodlust, and he simply smiled a feral grin. Naruto exclaimed, "Then every son and daughter of the Leaf shall die." He could smell fear coming from Jiraiya and Tsunade, though he was better at hiding it. Jiraiya saw Naruto smile before removing the necklace Tsunade had given him years prior from around his neck and holding it in his right hand. "You forget, Naruto. I can summon the toads, and Gamabunta can crush any army you throw at us, Jiraiya said. Gamabunta had much more respect for Naruto and the Yondaime than for the Sannin, so Naruto said, by all means summon him. I'll just tell the Toad Boss just who I am and what you did in terms of neglecting my father's dying wish. Whose side do you think he will be on when that happens? Yours? Or will he most likely be on mine? Jiraiya cursed that fact. The Slug Queen hoped to scare her enemy into reconsidering his invasion. I still have my slugs too, Naruto. They are loyal to me regardless of my neglect in my godmother duties to you, Tsunade said. I have a personal summons of my own outside of the toad, something that is so terrifying that even Orochimaru himself along with his snake summons would tremble in fear, Naruto said, observing the surprise in their eyes as they realized he had such a summons at his disposal. Go ahead, summon your slugs to fight me in battle. What kind of summons? Jiraiya asked, his own curiosity winning out. Naruto chuckled cruelly, frightening the two people in front of him. One I acquired on my travels while in the realm known as Middle-earth, a creature of shadow and flame, he exclaimed. Tsunade added, you still won't win, not so long as the will of fire, which lives in all the people of the loyal people Konoha, and will fight you to the end, as she heard Naruto laugh once more. The green jewel was crushed in Naruto's hands before the dusty remnants were released into the wind. You should be careful when it comes to the speaking about the will of fire like that, you old hag, you may just get burned, Naruto said. Tsunade declared, I have heard enough. This meeting between us is over. I promise you the next time we meet we will be on the battlefield with your heart in my hands, because she felt emotionally insulted by Naruto's actions and could no longer bear to be close to her godson. Naruto declared, you should be mindful of your promises, my godmother, and never make those you can't keep, while grinning as if there were no tomorrow, as something the leaf knew wasn't the case. Both Tsunade and Jiraiya had left Naruto without saying anything more to him before returning to Konoha to inform everyone of what was about to happen. While scowling at him once more as Naruto and Hinata walked back, the tent was taken down, the metal pole bearing the white flag of neutrality was taken down, and then the table and chairs were removed. Hinata said, I told you she wouldn't agree, Naruto-kun, after Naruto nodded. I know, Hinata-chan, I just wanted to see her one more time in a civil manner before this happens. Is the special package ready to be delivered by catapult? Said Naruto as Hinata nodded. Hinata saw Naruto grinning at her and gave the woman a passionate kiss on the lips. Yes, Hinata said, our 4 spies in Konoha have sent a message that all the civilians have been secured and Gaara is in position with his forces. When the signal is given, the Ents will strike from their position just outside the entrance of the Forest of Death, and strike from within when supporting Gaara's forces he brought with him from Suna. Naruto declared, time for the beginning of the end to be set in motion, as an elf appeared in front of him and displayed the black-sheathed samurai sword, which was to be the Namikaze's second most valuable weapon. Hinata didn't want to miss this, and he understood that, so she asked, are you going to charge into battle without me? Naruto made a gesture for another elf to step forward and give Hinata a silver bow staff that resembled his golden one but had lavender runes with seals on it. If we charged in there first, the battle would end within an hour. What's the point of having an army if you don't use it? I'm going to let my forces have their fun fighting the leaf. They deserve it after the long march here. For now, we'll sit back and enjoy the show before getting involved, he said. Hinata asked, for me? As she gazed in wonder at the weapon and then used her tongue to give her lover a passionate kiss. I take it you like your gift? Naruto asked, and then Hinata gave him another kiss, this time with more tongue and grinding against him. Knowing that it made Naruto's blood boil with desire, Hinata said sensuously, oh, I approve. All right, you're going to see and feel just how much I like this gift when this war with the leaf is over. Hinata gasped and gave Naruto a light slap on the shoulder when he said, damn, maybe we should postpone the invasion just to get our lust out of our system. Shame Tsunade's not still here, since we could tie her up and make her watch just to piss her off. Hinata exclaimed, pervert, but then let out a eep when Naruto grabbed her behind and used his hand motions to make her putty in his hands. Naruto heard Hinata groan at his magical touch and said, yeah, but I'm your pervert, and you love every act one due to your sexy body, before taking his hand away. When Hinata finally said, damn you and your hands. Before turning to the serious matter at hand, Naruto said, just showing you who is the master of this game, my dear, and then he gestured for his orc to command the catapult with the special delivery to send the package to the leaf to inform them of the meat business. The aforementioned orc gave the mountain troll the order to drop the axe onto the rope that was attached to the catapult's launch mechanism, which caused the package to fly straight into Konoha. Tsunade was on the scene to witness what Naruto's forces had launched at Konoha when the package crashed onto a building's roof, then struck a telephone pole and finally the ground. Tsunade's heart froze again when she realized that the object wasn't a what, but rather a whom, and she knew who it was. Yuhi Kurenai was the one the Junin had been severely beaten, and judging by the injuries before being launched into the leaf, someone had used the gentle fist taijutsu to render the nearly lifeless Yuhi Kurenai nearly unrecognizable. With the leaf symbol carved into her head, the word, hypocritical slut, written just above her breasts that had been cauterized so they wouldn't come off, and her hair shaved off, her head lacked the ever-luscious hair that contributed to her breathtaking beauty before Tsunade removed it and read it. A single note that was slowly becoming stained with the woman's blood was on her barely breathing, barely alive body. What befalls traitors is what they deserve, then comes your death in the leaves. Tsunade knew Yuhi Kurenai would be the first victim of the second invasion of Konoha when she heard a loud, inhuman roar coming from beyond the gate. The Whirlpool army used 3 of the 4 replicas of the original siege towers, ladders, and grand battering rams to attack Konoha from all sides. In an attempt to hold off the army long enough for their force to organize a suitable defense, shinobi were already on the wall, firing jutsu after jutsu down at the swarm, but the elves quickly killed those shinobi by shooting at will and striking any leaf shinobi that they could see on the wall. The Uruk-hai ascended the wall and battled the shinobi who were attempting to prevent them from entering Konoha, even after the ladders were set up. When the weapons used against the Uruk-hai struck flesh between the tiny gaps between their armor, their shuriken, kunai, and even swords broke under their armor with only minor damage. They pushed forward, though, knowing that a few cuts would not prevent them from their lord's victory here today. They were only minor flesh wounds, inconsequential marks that they regarded as badges of honor. The Leaf's defenses were smashed by the Uruk-hai berserkers, who were thought to be the most dangerous of their dark race despite having little armor. They also started bombarding the buildings in the Leaf with boulders that were fired over the wall by the catapults that were in place. It was difficult for the shinobi in Konoha to extinguish some of them because they were covered in oil before being ignited by Nibi's fiery chakra. In order to further assist the invasion of Konoha, the other Jinchuriki also employed their demonic abilities to breach the Leaf's defenses in their own unique ways. Any projectiles, such as arrows, fired by the elves, orcs, and Uruk-hai would not be visible until the very last moment because Han covered the majority of the army on his side with thick steam. Roshi sprayed lava on the boulders that were hurled from the catapults, and their impact inside Konoha left the Leaf with scarred markings that burned anything they came into contact with. As she led her army to the gates, Fu, who was more of a close combat designated fighter, moved with blinding speed and used the spear Naruto had made especially for her to kill every Leaf shinobi in her path. As he hovered just above Naruto and his brothers, awaiting orders, the Witch King asked, "What is your command, my lord?" Naruto displayed an image of Tenzo, a Leaf shinobi wearing an Enbu mask, who he remembered from his early childhood and who appeared to calm him down when he lost his temper after using Kyuubi's power to defend himself from mobs. "Fly through the village, kill all that stand in your way, but more importantly, kill this man, as he has the power to weaken me, and my mate. His presence must be removed before I enter village," Naruto said. The Namikaze had long suspected that this individual was related to Senju Hashirama in some way and possessed the ability to stifle demonic powers based on Naruto's memories of the Leaf's past as well as the memories of the former Kyuubi. Should Naruto or any of his 4 generals come into contact with him in combat, it would not be good without the demons inside their bodies. They were powerful enough on their own, but Naruto would rather that a fight of this nature didn't occur, and the man was killed before it started. The Witch King remarked, "There are quite a few in this village that wear this mask, my lord," hoping for a more realistic image with a real face to accompany it. After observing the Witch King nod, Naruto said, "Then I suggest you and the others kill them all. You will know it's him when he uses a special ability to summon wood-based attacks." He then flew into the village with the other Nazgul, destroying everything in their path. As they tore through the village with their fallen beasts, picking people up, dropping, and throwing them from high in the air, their shrieks filled the air, frightening every Leaf shinobi who heard them. With their swords drawn, the Nazgul sliced the heads of any Leaf shinobi that came into contact with them, piercing flesh with each stab. As the 9 former kings of men circled the village in search of the person Naruto wanted killed, they discovered him fighting close to Tsunade's position by erecting big wooden barriers with spikes on them. Meanwhile, the Uruk-hai was repelled by the Anbu team that accompanied him. The Witch King of Angmar exclaimed, "There he is, our target. I will deal him myself," as his fallen beast landed on a nearby roof above Tenzo, dismounted, and then leapt off the roof to confront the target his lord had given him the order to destroy. When Tenzo saw the enormous spiked mace hanging from a chain in one hand and the evil-looking blade in the other, he asked, "What are you?" When the Witch King swung the mace, Tenzo barely avoided it the first time and had to do so again a few seconds later when the Nazgul swung the weapon once more. Your death, the Witch King exclaimed. Tenzo was in a difficult position because his opponent was utilizing medium and close range to his advantage while avoiding the use of a wood jutsus to take down this evil villain. The fact that Tenzo was aware that wood jutsus were medium and short range didn't help either. The other Nazgul were circling above them as well, anticipating Tenzo's attempt to escape so they could leap down and murder him in their own manner. The others would simply swoop Tenzo before he could counter, defeating him even if he were to defeat the Witch King on the ground. Oshish T. As he avoided another attack that destroyed a house's wall and nearly brought down the building's roof on him, Tenzo thought this. Tenzo used a wood jutsus that rose from the ground on four sides of the Witch King and pinned him to the spot where he stood, temporarily defeating the Nazgul in a move that may have only required one shot at most. Tenzo saw the Nazgul's sword arm lowering before he pierced the ground with the weapon, using it for support and unable to escape, but only the Witch King's sword hand was free when the wood bloodline user looked up. He saw that the other Nazgul was too preoccupied with the other leaf shinobi nearby to pay attention to him. Instead, they concentrated on the Witch King, who was currently immobile. The Witch King declared, "This is not over," with Tenzo now standing in front of him. Tenzo moved for the Nazgul's medal, crown, and looked at the face behind the robes. "We'll see about that. I'm sure the INT division will have a field day picking your brain for information on how to strike back against Naruto," he said. The leader of his Nazgul now needed his assistance to break free due to his pinned down position, so Naruto thought, "That's what you think, Tenzo?" Grinning behind the wall, he had listened to the conversation with his demonic fox ears and linked with the Witch King using the One Ring before directing his power into it. The Witch King jumped back just as Tenzo was ready to take off the metal crown, because his body now seemed to throb with unanticipated strength. He then escaped his wooden trap and charged at his opponent with greater vigor. The Witch King's sword had slashed, cut, and burned everything it came into contact with, leaving the blade encased in flames. Tenzo leapt to his feet on a roof as the spiked mace was used with even more speed, but the Anbu was too focused on the Witch King to notice the fallen beast being flown by the Shadow Lord, who bit him on the shoulder before hurling the leaf shinobi against a building's wall. The Witch King was deliberately approaching the fallen man. Before bringing the sword of terror down on Tenzo's body, the Witch King declared, "Your forces will fail. The walls will soon be breached. All you love and cherish here in this world will soon die." He then allowed the fire to consume the man, who was now wailing in agony, and waited until all that was left of him was a burned corpse. After Naruto explained the nature of clones created from the various elements shinobi used to avoid their death, the Witch King picked up the head, easily detached it from the rest of the body, and carefully examined it for any indication of deceit. The Witch King crushed it in his hands, happy to discover that this skull was made of flesh rather than wood, as he had assumed the man would do to escape death. The Nazgul leader took to the skies once more and continued to bring death from above, calling his fallen beast to him. As for Tsunade, she was fighting the village's shinobi and obstructing the army that managed to breach the wall with her superpowers. She threw boulders and other heavy objects at them, crushing them against the wall, and she smashed the ground with her fists to knock them off balance. Jiraiya was using his abilities in a similar manner, calling forth armored toads with swords and shields to temporarily drive the Uruk-hai back, destroying anything that wasn't a human, striking them with a Rasengan, and striking them with lethal fire jutsus. With the help of a top-tier Anbu and Junin team to further fortify their line, it appeared to be effective on the northern wall of Konoha. The eastern wall was held by Kakashi, Guy, a mixed group of Junin, and a few Chunin along with some Suna shinobi, including the Kazukage's older brother Sabaku no Kankuro. Yugo's Anbu team and the elder generation of the Ino Shika Cho were baking them up on the southern wall. Special Junin Midarashi Anko, Sarutobi Asuma, Sabaku no Damari, and the other Rookie 9 with Guy's team were defending the western wall after learning of the Rakan team's death. The Kazekage Sabaku no Gara and his enormous Suna force were positioned in the middle of the town, prepared to engage in combat if the need arose naturally. Gara was aware that Naruto had not set up that plan and that the invading army had secret orders that specifically instructed them not to kill his siblings in this battle. The Ents would advance from their position in the Forest of Death, and Suna would strike from their center position when the signal was given. It would be too late for Tsunade to stop Suna's betrayal by the time she found out, and the leaf would be destroyed. Away from Konoha, as the original Grand battering ram, which had come from Middle-earth, was being pushed into position by his Mount Trolls, Naruto observed them smashing the gate in front of them from his side of Konoha's outer wall. Orcs and Uruk-hai were chanting the name Grand behind the huge battering ram. Hinata asked, "Is it time to engage the next part of the plan?" After observing Naruto as he watched everything happen and noticing that his bloodlust was significantly increasing. "Soon, not yet. Naruto said calmly as he watched in increasing anticipation as the Konoha Gate was demolished. Hinata had her own plans for Sakura, and they were going to be painful. Good, I can't wait to give that pink-haired bitch a piece of my mind. You know she was actually proud of your abuse when we were kids? I'm going to enjoy crushing her, Hinata said. In the same way that she had caused pain to Yuhi Kurenai, her former sensei. The Grand battering ram destroyed the gate with a loud smashing sound, and as it was pulled back, an army of armored mountain trolls charged in, knocking Leaf Shinobi aside. The orcs, who were the fastest in the army except for the elves, who remained outside as the army's reserve, charged in as the wave of mountain trolls cleared the way for more Uruk-hai. They quickly overpowered the Leaf Shinobi, who were diverted by the Uruk-hai they had been fighting with Naruto's army from those sides pouring through their entrances to the Leaf. The other gates were soon destroyed. Naruto told Hinata, signal Gaara and the Ents to begin their part in the invasion, and the woman nodded before releasing her chakra, knowing that Gaara, his forces, and the Ents would all sense it. Meanwhile, the Namikaze signaled for the catapults to stop firing. The Witch King said, "My lord, I bring word that the one you wish dead has been slain," and then she showed Naruto Tenzo's ashes before they dispersed into the winds. The Witch King was told by Naruto, "Excellent work. Continue pressing the attack and inform all 4 generals they may now enter Konoha. Orc. Mobilize the Warg Riders to hunt down anyone possibly hiding within clan buildings with elves to assist them," before he gave the nearby orc instructions to contact the elves and the Warg Riders. With Gaara announced into his personal transmitter, "It's finally time. Attention all Sunanin. This is your case cage speaking operation. Leaf implosion has begun," which each Sunanin could hear through their own earpieces. As soon as the order was given, a huge army of Ents stormed from their position in the Forest of Death, and the Sunanin, who were spread out across Konoha, struck the enormous tree herders had trampled into Konoha, destroying buildings, stomping down any Leaf Shinobi that stood in their way, and expressing their annoyance at the way the villagers had treated their lord as a child. A Leaf Shinobi exclaimed, "Suna has betrayed us," but was cut off when a Suna Shinobi slashed his throat with a kunai. In a fit of rage over losing the woman he loved to the Namikaze, Asuma exclaimed, "We should have known. Why didn't we suspect the case cage was siding with Naruto?" As Temari jumped away from the group of Leaf Shinobi, the Uruk-hai behind her hurried past to confront the Leaf Shinobi. "Because you're Bakas. That's why," Temari exclaimed. Enko exclaimed, "Shit. We need to retreat." After discovering that her current abilities could only defeat 2 or 3 Uruk-hai at once, however, that many was like a handful of sand being picked up from the beach, and now orcs and mountain trolls were rushing at her. After that, all of the Leaf Shinobi from all directions started to flee, but Naruto's forces had taken control of the town center, effectively cutting off their escape before long. The enemy had surrounded them. The different Leaf Shinobi of different ranks had been pushed into the proverbial corner and were now waiting for the end with their backs to one another. But it didn't arrive, at least not yet. The massive Uruk-hai army split apart, revealing Naruto approaching them with Hinata at his side, both of them grinning as Namikaze gave them all a derisive clap. Naruto's 4 generals stood to their left and right, all grinning. Seeing as Tsunade was staring at him and her knuckles were bloody from punching the armor from all the Uruk-hai she hit, Naruto said, "Bravo all of you, you killed more of my Uruk-hai and orc than I expected, though I see no mountain troll bodies. How disappointing. I truly thought the leaf would have killed if not wounded at least one of my well-armored heavy hitters, though it seems my expectations for what Konoha can and cannot do vary depending on the situation." There were undoubtedly some broken fingers, but if the woman had the opportunity, she could quickly heal and return to the battle. "This isn't over, Naruto. What you've done will make you an enemy of Iwa, Kumo, Taki, and their countries for doing this. Do you think the Fire Daimyo won't go to war over this and get the other countries involved?" Tsunade asked with a smirk. Naruto saw Tsunade continuing the glare as Jiraiya's ripped body struggled to stand next to her following the Uruk-hai's sword slash that almost killed him. "I doubt Iwa can go to hell. Taki is small, with only Fu being their main muscle. When she was with them, the Raikage won't do anything because we'll have talks and I am pretty confident he'll see things my way," Naruto said. Jiraiya asserted, "You still have to deal with the Akatsuki and Orochimaru. Not even you have the power to defeat such elusive shinobi," aware that this army was ineffective against a small group of individuals who were trained to attack from the shadows. Naruto wanted this group to survive and suffer in his own way, so he said, "I deal with them in my own way, not that you'll live long enough to see it happen. Bind them." Asuma declared, "I'm not going without a fight," as he charged Naruto, intending to murder the man and put an end to the Whirlpool ruler's life before he himself perished. Naruto met Asuma halfway, pulled out his sword from its sheath, and sliced the Sandame's son to pieces in a crimson flash of light. fool die like your lover," he exclaimed. With Sakura among the group terrified at the thought of attacking them and the other rookies feeling the same way, Hinata asked, "Anyone else wish to join him?" Tenten asked, "Why Hinata? Why are you with him?" After hearing the Hyuga woman growl and noticing Hinata staring at her with icy rage. Why not? Why can't I be happy? You may not believe it, but Naruto-kun makes me happy, and has since we were younger. All of you just see Naruto-kun as something so pathetic or monstrous that he should be crushed without mercy. And for what? For what? Because of the Kyuubi? You never once thought for yourself that perhaps the older generation was wrong about him being a monster and he only became one thanks to their hate-filled actions. You've never got to know him, never got to see beyond what your parents told you, and even listening to this old hag about Naruto-kun after the Uchiha was killed. Why should Sasuke be shown leniency for his betrayal while Naruto-kun gets marked down with a bounty on his head for being a missing nin? Hinata looked at Tsunade. The team sent to retrieve Sasuke was allowed to use force, but not to the point of killing the Uchiha, and was to bring him back alive. Tsunade said when he saw Naruto-s. He didn't want to come back the moment the opportunity came. Sasuke would have fled, and we all know it that Teme had the blood of arrogant traitors in his veins. The fact the people of the Leaf only pampered to his every whim didn't help either in that regard, said Naruto as the Hokage continued to scowl. Tsunade said, killing him wasn't the answer, in an attempt to instill some sense of guilt in him. Naruto once again ordered the group to be held for later, saying, "Says you and all the Uchiha lovers bind them." With more than half of the village under his control, groups of elves leading up the rear were told to start their raid of specific locations indicated on the maps he gave the assigned teams, while mountain trolls were demolishing buildings that were irrelevant to Naruto. "Where to next, my lord?" asked an Uruk-hai. While his 4 Jinchuriki generals bound the Leaf Shinobi one by one and placed chakra-suppressing cuffs on each of them, Naruto remained silent and moved the vanquished shinobi away for later. As he turned to face the cage, he approached Gaara and gave his friend a hug, which the one-tailed vessel returned. Naruto and Gaara nodded in agreement as Naruto said, "It's been too long, my friend and brother. Speaking through quick messages that we have to destroy within moments after reading can only last so long." Gaara described the Namikaze as a true friend and said, "I've missed you too. Naruto, I cannot thank you enough for your help with the Akatsuki and the killing of the 2 paired S-class nin paired specifically to defeat my power." He owed Naruto a great deal for that. As a demon of his word, Naruto was going to make sure that Gaara was fairly compensated for his assistance in the invasion. As promised, the spoils of war you wanted are being collected as we speak, and will be given to you before your departure, he said. "Helping me with this is more than enough." After observing his friend shake his head no, Gaara said, "Thank you Naruto, do you want us to help further?" Naruto saw Gaara nod, knowing that he would look forward to being the Namikaze's honored guest while visiting Whirlpool. "No, you don't have to Gaara, you've helped me this far with my invasion more than I could ever ask of you. I put you in a position where things could have gone south for you and your siblings had Tsunade not been so focused on me, though I will welcome you to come visit Whirlpool, as my honored guest, friend, and brother that I've always wanted," Naruto said. Gaara said, "Thank you again, Naruto. I won't delay you anymore from your revenge," as his forces withdrew to a safe place to rest. With his troops dispersed, Naruto commanded, "Spread out, destroy every piece of this village not being searched. I want this place to be wiped off the map." They smashed, crushed, and burned everything they could find that didn't seem valuable to him. "My lord!" exclaimed one of his elf commanders, who was in charge of one of the teams that raided shops selling shinobi items for his army. Naruto turned to face the elf who was bowing in front of him and asked, "What is it, Commander?" The elf commander handed Naruto the symbol he had written down and said, "My lord, we've found a secret passageway in one of the stores leading down to a deep underground network of paths and corridors. They look like they've been used recently with this mark above one of the doors." Naruto uttered, "I know what it is," with a slight growl upon seeing it. Hinata exclaimed in concern, What is it Naruto-kun?" "It's Danzo's and his little butt buddy root program. He may have everyone else fooled into thinking it's disbanded, but the Sandame knew it existed, and so did I when they tried to abduct me one night. Would have succeeded too if not for Uchiha Itachi killing them all. So the fool thinks he can hide under the village like a rat, does he? Well, I have something for him that he can't hide from, but we'll deal with that later, and in due time continue advancing to the Hokage monument. We have spies to visit after we sack the hospital," said Naruto, as he marched with Hinata, and the rest of the army still behind him while the rest fled to the clan homes. At some point later, inside the Hokage monument, A Chunin who was watching the door where the civilians were located asked Iruka, who was now coming down the corridor with the Konohamaru Corps, "What's going on? Any word from the outside?" Beside him. Iruka said, "Yeah, I have some information," after noticing the guard's nervous expression. The Chunin exclaimed, "What? What is it? What's the information?" after witnessing the immense size of Naruto's army and being afraid to confront it, let alone Namikaze. Iruka said, "We've been betrayed. This area is not secure," as she noticed that the Chunin were now preparing to panic. The Chunin exclaimed, "What? Betrayed? By who? Who would sell us out to that demonic abomination?" Before he heard a noise behind him, which caused the man to turn around and realize it was just a rat. Iruka said, "We did," as he swiftly cut the man's throat and flung him to the ground, where he choked on his own blood. When Konohamaru saw the man grinning at the young genin trio, he asked, "What next, Iruka-sensei?" Iruka saw the three shake their heads and remained steadfast. "Now we wait for Naruto. If you want to back out of this now, I'll let you leave without stopping you, and convince Naruto to not pursue," he said. Konohamaru exclaimed, "We're loyal to the boss," as he saw Iruka grinning at them with pride. Iruka said, "Good to hear," just before Namikaze Naruto's figure appeared. When Naruto saw the Konohamaru Corps, he said, "Yes, it is. I'm proud of all four of you." Rushed to give him a hug, and the Namikaze gave it back. Iruka saw Naruto nod and then gesture for his army of elves to enter from behind him. "This is the only way into the large room. Ayame and her father are in there too. You can trust them, Naruto," she said. After observing his elves nod, Naruto said, "Restrain everyone, but keep all physical force against those that resist to a minimum. I want them taken alive," just before Iruka unlocked the door and let them pour in. As Naruto departed with his four faithful spies to go outside, there were cries of fear, a sound of resistance, and then silence. Office of the Hokage. Sometime later, when Yugito and the other generals entered the office and saw Naruto sitting in the chair wearing the Hokage robes, they asked, "So how's the chair?" Naruto remarked, "Not bad, but Tsunade's fat ass ruined the seating, though she made a huge imprint of it that no jutsu could fix," before becoming enraged over the old chair he used to enjoy sitting in with the Sandame and throwing it out the window. "You're the spitting image of your father in those robes, you know that, right?" Han replied simply. Before creating shadow clones and having them remove everything from the office to examine later, Naruto said, "Yeah, I kind of gathered from the picture on the wall above," before proceeding to the wall that held the forbidden scroll of sealing. Naruto witnessed the raid on the other ones that belonged to clan heads, council members, and other tower employees. As they were leaving the office, it was required that all documents be carefully organized, packed, and returned to Whirlpool so that Naruto could examine the contents for himself. When Naruto emerged from the Hokage monument, the individuals who had been hiding there were blindfolded to prevent their terrified minds from seeing death everywhere and shackled on all four limbs while their children were separated from them. The adults knew they were going to die as they marched slowly to the execution chamber that the orcs were setting up, lined up in a single row and under the watchful eye of Naruto's army. After an elf commander named Zurich said, "My lord, we found the girl you mentioned earlier and her father. We have arranged for transport using the carriage that came from the capital of Fire Country and will see to it they go to Wave Country." Naruto nodded. Seeing that the elf commander was uncertain of how to respond, Naruto asked, "How do they feel about my actions?" Zurich remarked, "Hard to say, my lord, but I don't think they despise you and can be called your friends," as Naruto shook his head in response. Naruto said, "Not friends, they're the closest thing I have to family. Ayame was like a sister to me, and her father was like one to me too," after noticing the elf commander nod. Zurich said, "Understood, my lord," as he watched Naruto approach his highly valued group of inmates, who were Leaf Shinobi, who were still being closely watched despite being in handcuffs. Tsunade asked, ignoring the mountain troll beside her who was holding the spiked mallet, "Why haven't you killed us yet?" "Why do you ask? Are you in a hurry to die? You shouldn't be, considering hell awaits in the afterlife for all of you," Naruto said, observing the Hokage growl. Had she not been unable to take a single step before the mountain troll crushed her with his weapon, she would have hurried him out of the way. Jiraiya said, "Your father would be ashamed of you," and then he coughed a little because his injuries had made him less healthy. Naruto saw the Sannin glare before his coughing worsened and blood began to flow from his mouth. "My father wanted me to be seen as a hero. It's not my fault you jackasses couldn't see past your own pain to follow through with it," Naruto said. As Naruto's gaze shifted to him, Kakashi remarked, "You could have persevered to win the people over." As Naruto approached his former sensei, he said, "You really think I'm an idiot, don't you?" and seized him by the throat. "What?" Kakashi asked, struggling to breathe even as Naruto's hand gradually crushed his windpipe. Naruto said, "You really are pathetic. You think I don't hear things, Kakashi? You thought I was so weak back when I was on Team 7 and you thought I'd never spy on you when I was with the other Chunin, and civilians throughout Konoha. I heard all your talks about me, how you laughed at my dream of being Hokage, how you were never going to accept me as your Hokage, how you'd gain my trust if I ever did, and when I least expected you would kill me before celebrating my demise with the village's residents." Kakashi cried out as the constriction in his throat grew and everyone heard Naruto growl. "And Naruto, you have to understand, it was a difficult time for all of us, and the people of Konoha were still suffering because of the Kyuubi," he said. "I understand perfectly, you baka. My suffering was a joke to you. A comedy of your own design and my expense. The instant I was free, it became your tragedy because it would be stopped, and then turned to horror once the army I created to crush the leaf made its way to your doorstep. How does it feel, Hitaki? How does it feel knowing your life is in the hands of the man you once persecuted when he was just a child? It brings fear to your heart. I can see it in your eye, I can smell it. I can feel it," said Naruto as he threw the defeated Junin ground before the Uruk-hai helped him stand up. When Tsunade noticed Naruto observing them all with calculating eyes, she asked, "What do you want from us now?" "Me? Nothing. I just want you all to suffer, and I know the best way to make that happen. However, there are some among you who shouldn't have to suffer, and in fact will be given the offer to join me in revolutionizing the world. Should you turn it down, I will understand, and give you a silent painless death depending on your response to the offer, of course," said Naruto as the group looked defiantly back at their leader. Tsunade claimed, "I told you earlier that no son or daughter of the leaf would ever submit to a foreign ruler," after noticing Naruto's current laughter. Naruto saw Tsunade narrow her eyes before they widened in comprehension. "And I told you, old hag, that every son and daughter loyal to the leaf shall die," Naruto said. Tsunade assertively remarked, "Well, you won't find anyone here willing to join your side." Naruto said, "I'll be the judge of that," and then he approached Anko, who was attempting to maintain a brave front in the face of his piercing gaze. Anko saw the man in front of her raise an eyebrow and said, "I won't serve you. Nothing you offer me will change my mind." Naruto asked, "Are you so sure? Not even to remove that cursed seal on your neck?" Anko's eyes widened in response. "You can do that?" Anko asked, then scolded herself for expressing her wish to be rid of Orochimaru's corrupt influence in her body. Tsunade yelled, "Don't listen to him," but Hinata silenced her with a punch to the stomach. "During my secret studying of seals, it was one of the top secret assignments the third Hokage charged me with, and I would have been able to do it had the Uchiha not gone off to run to his future buddy responsible for yours. Since your own isn't active, it makes removing it all the more easier, and can do it right now for a price," said Naruto, recalling his days as an in the Middle Earth. "My servitude," Anko stated plainly, and Naruto nodded. Naruto saw Anko wince at the derogatory terms people used to characterize her, which he knew she heard while serving the leaf with unwavering loyalty to demonstrate that she wasn't like her former sensei. "Unlike here, you won't be considered some slutty snake bitch, or Orochimaru's broken whore. In Whirlpool, where I intend to establish my own village, I think your experience would be invaluable," Naruto said. "They don't say it so much now," Anko said, attempting to resist the urge to live a life free of that ominous cloud. Naruto told her, "Probably because the councils and the Hokage had set plans in motion to eliminate you through a mission to assassinate me after the recon team came back," before he showed her the mission Tsunade planned to carry out through the appropriate channels. Anko read that it was a one-way suicide mission and a solo mission without backup. "What? Just me?" she asked. Naruto saw that Anko wanted to cry at this news and said, "Just you, Anko, just you against unknown terrain forces, and then me if you ever got through them. I'll still think being their loyal lapdog to prove you're worthy of being called their equal is worth it." Anko heard Hinata growl at the offer, but Naruto raised a hand to stop the Hyuga and saw the Namikaze smile gently. "I'll join you, please. Get this mark off me, and I do whatever it is you want. I'll be your damn sex slave. Your prized concubine even. Anything you want if it means being free of Orochimaru's taint, and this horrible place," Anko said. Before the Uruk-hai followed Naruto's instructions and the Lord of Whirlpool immediately followed Anko to inspect the seal, Naruto said. "That won't be necessary, Anko, though I thank you for the offer all the same." Anko said simply, bracing herself for the pain, "I assume the removal of the cursed seal will hurt." As he placed the ring of power on the cursed seal and applied crimson chakra to the appendage, Naruto remarked, "No doubt even without it being active, it's still attached to your soul, and has to be removed carefully." In order to prevent Anko's neck from feeling the sting of the mark when Orochimaru was around, Naruto had initially managed to seal it. However, if the Sannin ever captured his former pupil, the seals would probably be broken, weakened, or removed. Having the cursed seal mark sealed away was no longer an option, and the only way to get rid of it was to do so in what many would describe as a more barbaric fashion. He supposes, however, this was probably the best course of action because it would free Anko and give Naruto a new whirlpool ally. Anko shivered as the cold metal of the One Ring touched her skin, but she still felt warm. "I'm ready," she said. "I know," Naruto said before closing his eyes and using his power to cover the cursed seal mark. He felt it gradually remove the mark from her soul, severing all ties to Anko, like removing dead skin without removing too much so that good skin would be left behind. "Oh my god, this hurts." Anko felt as though someone had taken a blowtorch to the cursed seal and was resisting the urge to scream out. "Thank Kami I never activated this thing or I'd never be able to stand it," she thought. Naruto tightened his grip on his chakra to compress it around the mark. After severing the final fragment of the cursed seal from Anko's soul, he then covered it with an orb and removed the cursed seal from Anko's body. A nearby elf caught Anko as she fell to the ground, and Naruto squeezed the object in his hand before it was formally crushed, sending the remnants flying into the air like ashes. Naruto remarked, "Congratulations, Anko-san, you are now free of Orochimaru's influence," as he watched Anko gradually stand up and start to pant heavily while feeling lighter. She felt as though a heavy burden had been removed. Quite literally, considering the situation. Anko bowed respectfully to Naruto and in front of the others before receiving her trench coat back, "And in return for this action, I am yours to command, my lord," she said. As the others remained motionless, Naruto exclaimed, "Great, who else?" Kakashi said, "Sorry, but no one else is willing to sleaze their way out of a noble death," just before Naruto gave him the backhand. Before nodding to an elf who comprehended the order and started escorting them to their assigned location as guests of honor. A sort of front row seat at the public executions, and Naruto asked, "Who said your death would be a noble one?" The elf commander was given a scroll to read from as the first group of citizens marched up to the nooses that were now around their necks. By the order of the Lord of Whirlpool, Namikaze Naruto, the son of Yondaime Hokage Yellow Flash Namikaze Minato and the red hot-blooded habanero Uzumaki Kushina of Whirlpool, you are all hereby charged with treason against both of these clans, with the punishment being death by hanging, the elf commander said. Prior to the ground being torn from beneath them. "Bastard," Tsunade thought as she saw Naruto observing without regret. The elf commander exclaimed, "The right to have an assembly suspended," before Orc, wearing a helmet, pulled the lever once more. Yugo thought, "This is cruel." As she saw that some of the people who were going to be hanged were people she thought were good friends, she winced as they fell, the rope snapping their necks loudly. The elf commander declared, "The right to a trial suspended," just before another line of people was suspended. Jiraiya told Tsunade, "He's trying to make us suffer emotionally," as she watched another line of people hanged. The elf commander declared, "The right to legal counsel and be tried by a jury of your peers suspended," just before another line of people perished quickly. Tsunade said, "I hate you, Naruto," as she glared at the man nearby. Naruto said, "Tell me something I don't know," as he watched another line fall, and the terrified individuals who had ruined his life for years believed they could get away with it. They were completely mistaken. The elf commander exclaimed, "The right to appeal sentencing suspended," as another line was thrown into the steadily expanding pile of dead. Ino, who was unable to look any longer, yelled, "Enough! Make it stop, please make it stop." The platinum blonde was compelled to look at the line of people who were being slowly forced to their deaths by the orc next to her. Whether they were retired shinobi or merely civilians, line after line of people were killed by hanging. Even some shinobi from clans that did not lose in combat were not immune to Naruto's wrath because they were also killed by hanging, which is customarily reserved for traitors and backstabbers of any missing nin taken from the leaf after they were found guilty in court, rather than by the enemy's sword. After discovering the hidden room where the girl was discovered during the raid on the Hyuga clan, an elf asked, "What do you want to do with this one, my lord?" Hyuga Hanabi was the younger sister of Hinata. Naruto said, "Not my department, that's a family matter to be handled by my mate," as he watched Hinata approach him, give him a cheek kiss, and then turn to face her terrified younger sister. Sister, said Hanabi, who was now afraid of Hinata because she was no longer the timid, shy girl who would stand aside to stop the Hyuga elders from creating a branch family member of the Hyuga clan, but rather a demonic fox who could crush nearly anyone with a simple flick of her wrist. "Take her to Whirlpool under watchful guard with quarters prepared at Isengard, for her no harm is to befall my little sister unless she resists," Hinata said, observing Hanabi's back stiffen and knowing that her sister would not attempt anything. An elf bowed to the woman and said, Yes, Mistress Hinata, before a group of elves arrived and escorted the still shook Hyuga girl out of the room. As Naruto turned slightly to face her, Tsunade asked, "What do you plan to do with the children you now turn into orphans? Or do I really want to know?" Naruto, who had already discussed establishing an adoption program with the Wave Daimyo, stated, "They won't be orphans for long. I intend to give them new homes where they will learn how to work hard and be humble for what they have in Wave Country." He also made sure these children understood that their lives were easier than they are now. For the village's civilian children, at least, that was his plan. Whirlpool is where members of shinobi clans and families would grow up. And what happens when they become adults? Yugo asked, aware that the children might seek retribution after they reached adulthood. "Why do you think I blindfolded them so they wouldn't see their parents die?" Naruto asked, observing Tsunade glaring at him with a deep hatred for this. By the time they are adults, they will have families of their own to raise, and be too busy to think about revenge. Tsunade said, "Doesn't matter, we're the least of your problems," since she was aware that the Shinobi Council and Danzo were not among the people being hanged in front of her. "I have it under control," Naruto said, referring to Danzo, the Shinobi Council, and the Root Shinobi hiding underground like rats. He knew that the only way Danzo could get away with Root's actions right in front of the Sandaime was to do it ironically under Konoha, and that the Shinobi Council was working with that cripple because they were nowhere to be found. Jiraiya asked, "How?" Because he was certain Danzo couldn't fall like it was the easiest thing in the world, and he didn't think Naruto was the one who could pull it off. Naruto smiled at Jiraiya as he saw the man, who was slowly dying, look perplexed. "How do you flush out rat?" he asked. "How?" Tsunade asked in response to her former teammate. Naruto saw his men behind Tsunade quietly moving into position with the packages he knew would do their job. "You set the nest on fire and watch the head rat scurry away before catching him in a death trap from which there is no escape," Naruto said. The man had nowhere to go. Even if Danzo's root forces were able to survive or he managed to get away by some other means outside of Konoha, Naruto himself suspected that Danzo would set up escape routes in the locations where his army was already present. "He cannot get away with this, in my opinion." As Tsunade fought against her handcuffs, she thought, "I need to break free and find a way to free these people before it's too late." However, the Urukai's growl warned the Hokage not to try anything, and she could feel the creature's blade close to her back. Naruto eyed the Urukai next to Jiraiya and nodded to his faithful soldier before it punched the Toad Sannin in the spine. "Still trying to get free, old hag? You should know better, but given how senile you have become, it's not really surprising, and just have to learn not to be so bold," Naruto said. The armored fist then struck Jiraiya in the jaw, shattering it with teeth flying out as he let out a cry of agony before collapsing to his knees. Tsunade begged Naruto to postpone his Urukai, but he didn't even lift a finger, and Jiraiya continued to be struck, further aggravating his wounds. Tsunade said, Stop it, Naruto. I want to make a bet with you," after noticing that Naruto was now interested in placing a wager with her. Naruto raised a hand to stop the Urukai from beating Jiraiya and said, "A bet? With me? Are you sure you want to, considering how bad you are at gambling?" Tsunade, noticing Naruto's intense interest, gestured for the hangings to stop on the execution platform and said, "Yes, a bet you and I fight in the arena with our summons, my slugs, versus whatever your personal summons you possess." Naruto asked, "And what is the wager behind this duel of the summons?" as he moved a few paces in her direction until he was looking directly at the woman. Tsunade saw Hinata tensing at this and was ready to rip into her if Naruto hadn't moved to stop the Hyuga woman. "If I win, you die at my hands, your army leaves, and the rest of these people go free," she said. Naruto said, "Sounds fair. However, when I win our battle, they all die first, and you die last, knowing you are the last loyal shinobi of the Leaf," telling Tsunade that she was placing her bet on the lives of the Leaf's citizens rather than just herself in this summons battle. He did this by staring into her eyes. "Deal," Tsunade exclaimed with ferocious resolve. "Deal, bring everyone to the stadium. It's only fair that they witness Senju Tsunade, their last hope, being destroyed by her own vice," Naruto said with one of his most sinister smiles. "Examine Stadium Chunin, time to die." Naruto. Summoning Jutsu, Tsunade exclaimed as she called forth her devoted boss summons Katsuyu, who appeared perplexed by the situation and was informed about Konoha's demise at the hands of a vindictive, demonic Naruto. "I see you still just can't get enough of playing the tragic heroine when ironically enough it was through me that people get to see you act the part after all. If it wasn't for me, you would not even be Hokage, and just another drunk blowing her money away gambling before running from debt collectors," said Naruto, as he observed that Tsunade him as well as Katsuyu. When Tsunade saw Naruto shaking his head, she said, Just shut up and summon your creature Naruto unless you're actually afraid to lose. Naruto bit his thumb, placed it on his arm tattoo, and channeled demonic chakra into his palm before slamming it down hard with a great roar that reverberated throughout the stadium and a spiraling tower of fire that reached upward to touch the heavens above. You're going to wish you hadn't said that, old hag Katsuyu. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you have to face this creature, and the fact your summoner just happens to be a stubborn gambling fool. Summoning jutsu, Naruto said. Tsunade took a few steps back, watching in horror at the evil that Naruto had brought forth. It is true that seeing such a manifestation of evil can make one feel afraid through the fire. Wings that appeared to be made of shadows materialized, and a massive body that was as tall as Katsuyu was formed, with horns that eventually revealed eyes made of the flame surrounding it. When the spiraling tower of fire stopped, the spectators saw the creature Naruto had called forth. The Balrog Jiraiya asked, "By Kami, what is that?" After noticing the creature's curious expression as it glanced at the slug boss and then back at Naruto, as if it was trying to recall something. With the lives of the remaining Konoha residents on the line, Tsunade instructed the Balrog to crush Naruto's summons. "The giant creature in front of you is your enemy Balrog, kill it," Naruto said. Gesturing to Katsuyu, the Balrog then turned to face the slug boss summons. The Balrog charged at the slug boss summons with a powerful roar that produced a powerful heatwave. It formed a fire-shaped sword and blasted it down on Katsuyu, slicing her in half and burning her alive. Quickly swerving to the right, the Slug Queen ducked beneath a flaming blade swipe and hurled high-density acid at the creature. To the surprise of those who were aware of the acid's strength, the Balrog retaliated by consuming its whole body in flames and replacing the sword with a fire whip. Now that the whip had struck her, Katsuyu was suffering from terrible burn marks on her body before she swiftly split into several smaller slugs. Balrog was more irritated than impressed by its opponent's strategy for avoiding the agony inflicted on the Slug Queen's person as it observed the numerous slugs moving about on the ground. As the fire spread from its own body, the small slugs around him were either severely burned or made to whimper from the extreme heat the Balrog was producing. Katsuyu reformed into her large form, but before she could come up with a plan, the Balrog's clawed, weaponless hand grabbed her by the throat and stabbed the Slug Queen with a reformed sword of fire, causing Tsunade's faithful summons to scream in agony. Katsuyu had attempted to split herself into several slugs once more, but the fire-made sword had complicated the process and interfered with her ability to focus. The Slug Queen felt her life literally on fire and was unable to leave the field because of the Balrog's hold, so she could only gaze into its ruthless, fiery eyes. Tsunade exclaimed, "Katsuyu!" as she watched in horror as her beloved friend and Slug Queen died right in front of her. Naruto grinned at Tsunade and said, "Looks like I win," as his Balrog gave a loud roar of triumph over the Slug Queen and then briefly fixed its gaze on the Hokage. And started to move forward. Then, using a combination of his chakra and the Ring of Power, he controlled his summons and expelled him from the world, leaving behind dark smoke that gave the place a tainted aura. Tsunade said, "Impossible," as she collapsed to her knees, humiliated, defeated, and unable to fully process that she had lost to Naruto. She had lost her wager on the lives of the Konoha residents. Naruto approached Tsunade and saw the defeated expression on her face. "You should know by now that betting against the devil is never a good thing. He always wins," he said, grabbing her by the throat and raising her into the air. Tsunade said, "Impossible," because it was all she could say while staring at him, and it only made Naruto smile even more. Naruto remarked, "You should know by now, Tsunade, that with me nothing is impossible," before he squeezed her until she was deprived of oxygen and passed out. Tsunade found herself sitting in a chair with the other shinobi who were still waiting to be executed. When she regained consciousness, Jiraiya appeared even worse than when she had last seen him. A small group of civilians were being hanged once more in front of her. They were lined up, had nooses around their necks, and then, with a lever pull, they fell to a quick death without even touching the ground. "It's unbelievable that I lost." Tsunade looked sad at the scene in front of her and saw Naruto a few feet to the left with his arms folded. "I bet with the lives of the people of the Leaf and I lost like I do with every time I gamble," she thought. "Don't feel bad, Tsunade, your summons fought and died bravely," Naruto said, observing her defeat after placing the wager out of the corner of his eye. Tsunade grimly remarked, "She didn't have to die. You didn't have to kill Katsuyu, just defeat her in combat," still not accepting that Katsuyu had passed away. "You challenged me to the duel of summons, Tsunade. Surely you realized, given your profession, that any fight between summons can be a fight to the death. It wasn't the first time that such a battle took place, remember?" said Naruto as he observed Tsunade. "I remember. You could have shown her mercy," Tsunade remarked, feeling some of her old rage flare up when she saw Naruto laughing. "Mercy? Mercy? What do you possibly know of showing mercy? I worked my fingers to the bone every single day I was a shinobi, fighting to prove I wasn't a monster, and that I was not the monster everyone thought, that perhaps they were mistaken in their belief that I was a monster. How was I rewarded for my efforts? I was shunned for it, I was abused for it, and I was hated for it by everyone around me. They not only hated me for the fox in my gut, but they actually had the nerve to hate me for trying to prove them wrong, and see the truth rather than denounce the lie. Why should I show an inch of mercy to people who don't even know the meaning of the word, and talk like they do? Said Naruto prior to turning. Another line of Leaf civilians failed to touch the rope around their necks. Nothing was said by Tsunade. It was too late to say anything now, so she didn't have to. It was finally time for Tsunade's group to face their judgment when all of the civilians, defeated shinobi from clans, and other captured individuals were hanged. They heard execution drums as their line ascended the final steps they would ever take again. Knowing that it would be the final musical beat they would ever hear, they were all cuffed and had their nooses tied around their necks, with only Tsunade crying as the guards watched them closely, knowing that they were about to die. Before feeling the Uruk-hai tighten his noose around his neck to silence him, Jiraiya smiled on his bleeding, bruised face and said, "Don't cry, Tsunade, and we'll meet again soon on the other side. You, me, Shizune, Dan, and Nawaki are all going to be together again. We'll talk, laugh, drink, and gamble like we used to when we were all together." Naruto said, "Shizune won't be joining you. I've convinced her to join me, having already done so after capturing Tsunade and his forces, defeating the enemy at the hospital, and then hanging the remaining people after killing the resistors. He confronted no one on the hospital roof except Shizune." Rewind. Hospital roof, join me, Shizune, Naruto said, observing Shizune poised for combat as his two Uruk-hai appeared prepared to protect their lord. "You sacked the village, killed a large number of them already, and are no doubt going to continue doing so after Konoha is all yours. Why should I join you? You have nothing I want," Shizune said as Naruto smiled. Naruto moved more quickly than Shizune could react and placed the Namikaze's hand on her face before the woman realized she had been pushed back against the hospital roof fence after feeling her back strike it. "Perhaps, but the thing is, Shizune, this invitation to you is merely a formality, and if you won't join willingly, well then I'll just have to make you see things my way," Naruto said. Naruto poured all of his influence from the ring of power into Shizune's mind before she could react, and he smiled when he saw the resistance she was putting up. Shizune's spirit and mind, however, were no match for the One Ring, and she soon saw things from Naruto's perspective. Before she gave up fighting, Naruto let go of Shizune's face and stepped back to watch her slowly stand up, grinning at the fact that she was no longer fighting to get away. As Shizune bowed to him, she said, "I am yours to command, Naruto-sama," and Naruto simply continued to smile. Flashback end. No. Tsunade screamed as she rose from her seat, but the mountain troll's hand behind her pulled her back down, threatening to beat her to death. Before giving the thumbs down hand motion, Naruto said, "Don't worry, Tsunade, Shizune is in good hands now. Mine." The orc on the lever nodded and pulled it. I'm the last true shinobi of the leaf," Tsunade declared as the irony of her predicament finally dawned on her. Was the Senju clan present when it started? Would they still be present when it ended? "Not yet. My mate wants to have a little fun with Sakura," Naruto said, and Tsunade noticed that the pink-haired woman was gone, but she could still hear Hinata yelling at her, Haruno screaming, and the body being butchered and torn to pieces. After 10 or so minutes, Hinata emerged from her position, licking the red liquid from her blood-stained hands. The taste of blood in her mouth made Hinata purr a little. "That was a long time coming," she said. "Dead, I take it?" Naruto asked after noticing his companion nod. "Very much so," Hinata said as she approached him and gave Naruto a passionate kiss. Naruto remarked, "Then all that's left to do is finish off Tsunade," observing that Tsunade was now trembling, though he was unsure if this was due to fear, shock, or rage at what had happened. He didn't care either. Tsunade watched him draw his sword, glowing crimson with his chakra, and the runes on the blade added to the eerie atmosphere. "So how'd I die? Quick? Or would you prefer slow just to make me suffer more?" she asked. The female Hokage received her response with a flash of crimson, and before Naruto sheathed his sword, Senju Tsunade's head hit the ground with a soft thud. Naruto said, "There is your answer," and then he placed the body inside a storage scroll to be buried in whirlpool. The Namikaze was not sure why he was doing it, but he felt driven to do it because he was not one to defy instinct. When Hinata noticed her lover grinning, she gestured for the woman to follow him. "Now that is done, what do we do about Danzo, the Shinobi Council and all their root forces?" she asked. Naruto showed Tsunade what the elves were doing and said, "You see these large metal balls? My men are rolling down the secret passage into the underground section of the leaf." I wasn't lying when I told Tsunade that the best way to flush out a rat was to set it on fire. "Yes, what are they?" Hinata asked, preferring to listen to Naruto's explanation over using her eyes to deceive. "They are all powerful bombs I worked on, filed with my chakra at dangerous levels that upon exploding will cause unfathomable damage, and that's just with one of these. In fact, this one ball has enough power in it to obliterate a village 3 times the size of the leaf, and with plenty of energy to spare to make sure nothing grows from it," said Naruto as he gazed at Hinata's. When Hinata noticed a group of elves carefully rolling at least 3 down below, she asked, "How many did you throw down there?" Naruto said, "Including those 3 you just saw, 5, as his shock level continued to rise. Hinata asked, "Why so many?" after realizing who she was with and considering that 5 might be too many. Naruto and Overkill could be mistaken for one another. Naruto stated, "Because the underground complex below is huge, I can sense a great deal of chakra below us of all the root shinobi down there waiting for us to leave here so they can rebuild it and start over on their terms on what it takes to be a shinobi," and the woman nodded, confirming his statement with her Byakugan. "I see them. Danzo and the Shinobi Council are in the deepest parts of the underground area in a bunker with chakra absorption seals to further protect them from harm," said Hinata as she observed Naruto smirking. "Trust me, the amount of power packed into one of these is more than enough to overload those seals, and kill them all. Still, it never hurts to go the extra mile, and leave one's own mark on the world," Naruto said, knowing that this was it. As the army was leaving, Hinata asked, "How are they triggered?" "Each bomb is set with a timer seal set to go off when the crimson line in the time seal meets its end, which should be in about 20 minutes, Naruto calmly stated. Knowing that an army of this size needed more than 20 minutes, Hinata asked, "Is that enough time?" Naruto stated, "The timers won't go off until I activate the hand signs for them," understanding that his army would need to move away from this location before the timers would go off. "My lord, the explosives are in position, and ready to be armed," one of the orcs who was coming toward him declared. Knowing that time was of the essence, Naruto asked, "Good. When will everyone be clear of the village?" As Naruto nodded in comprehension, the orc remarked, "An additional 20 to 30 minutes, sir. We're getting the last spoils of the leaf out of here." Naruto saw the orc nod and hurried to tell everyone, "We have 10 minutes to get out of here before I trigger the timer on the bombs. Inform everyone." Hinata saw him smirking at her and immediately knew the answer. "I just realized something. Who do you plan on being the cage of your new village, Naruto-kun?" she asked. When Naruto saw Hinata, he was taken aback and honored. "Who better to handle my shinobi village than you, my mate?" he asked. Hinata asked, "Are you sure?" Because she would much rather be with her friend and rule Whirlpool with him. It wouldn't be forever. Konohamaru would have to be trained to be strong enough to be ready for the right to the title one day. Anko will be in charge of Anbu. Shizune will be leading my medical program. I need someone I can trust with the might to rule until your successor is ready, said Naruto as Hinata nodded in agreement. Hinata poked a finger at his chest and declared, "I'll do it, but I want a big introduction ceremony." Naruto said, "Done. And later that night, I'll give you something else too." Hinata blushed when she realized what it was. The 3 of them flew off to Whirlpool with a Nazgul escort after Naruto went over the hand signals required to activate the timer seal on the bombs before he and Hinata left using the fallen beast of the Witch King that the Nazgul provided. Since the Ents needed special ships to transport them, the army was already advancing to the boats, and more were on the way while their master and his 2 associates remained in their special bunker within the underground complex. The root shinobi were working to disarm the bombs as the bombs gradually started to count down. Homura said frightfully, "We should evacuate now before the bombs detonate." Knowing that his root shinobi would not let him down, Danzo said calmly, "Calm down. Homura, my root shinobi are already disarming the bombs as we speak. The demon brat won't win against us. Besides, the seal around this bunker will absorb all the power behind the explosion should they fail." Since Kaharu had never seen anything like those creatures before, she asked, "How did he get this strong? How did he acquire such an army?" She was amazed by the strength of each one. Knowing that all he had to do was wait a little while, reshape the leaf from the ashes of its defeat, and then, once we rebuild the leaf in my image, the Kyuubi brat's days are numbered, and he will be forced into submission like he should have been from the start, Danzo said. A huge explosion from outside put an end to any more thoughts, and the demonic force behind it vaporized everyone underground. All of the leaf had been destroyed and would eventually be reduced to nothing more than a dim memory. Everyone in the elemental countries quickly learned of the leaf's destruction, as was to be expected given its fall. People of all ages, from saints to sinners, wealthy to impoverished, were told about Konoha's demise at the hands of one of its own. Most were shocked to learn that the leaf died due to the power of the new Kyuubi, Namikaze Naruto of Whirlpool, rather than Orochimaru, who many thought would have caused it. Several scouts from various villages arrived at the location where Konoha once stood after the army of Whirlpool left. They saw nothing but a crater of nothing where the leaf's foundation had once been, and the 5 heads, which were once proudly displayed on the Hokage monument, had been reduced to a mere stain with not even a single facial feature left on the mountainside. The different Kages in charge of their respective villages met with their own advisors to discuss their options after the various shinobi groups informed their superiors about what they had witnessed. The loss of their demon vessels, which they had attempted to subdue after years of hateful abuse to break their wills, upset the Iwa, but it seems that it only caused the 2 war-made weapons to look for an alternative, which Namikaze Naruto provided. The Tsuchikage wanted to fight Whirlpool, but their forces would have to march a long way from their corner of the elemental countries to Whirlpool, and getting there would be difficult because boats would be needed to reach the continent-sized island since they had no idea about Naruto's forces. Iwa lacked the resources to launch such a costly and probably very costly endeavor. Without much effort, the Namikaze defeated the Leaf on their own field. As the Raikage sought advice from his younger brother Killer Bee, the second strongest demon vessel of the 9, Kumo had a similar but different viewpoint. He advised the Raikage to think about holding peace negotiations with Whirlpool. Naruto saved Yugito because the Akatsuki were pursuing her and Kumo was doing little to stop it. This provided Naruto with the ideal opportunity to include the Nibi vessel in the mix. The Raikage had to grudgingly agree because he felt bad about having been more concerned with keeping Killer Bee safe than Yugito because Bee was his younger brother. After hearing what his younger brother had to say, the Raikage dispatched a peace envoy to Whirlpool to request that Yugito return to Kumo and to express their desire to establish a non-aggression pact. Yugito would be staying in Whirlpool, where she would be safe from the Akatsuki and not be persecuted by others for being the Nibi's vessel. Naruto told the peace envoy. Other than that, Naruto was fine with the deal the Raikage wanted to make with him and sent the envoy to tell Kumo's leader about it. In order to enforce Yugito's stay in Whirlpool, Naruto also claimed that the army's use of the leaf was merely a small portion of his arsenal and that, if they weren't careful, they could use much more on Kumo. The Raikage, of course, agreed to the slightly modified agreement, and there was even the possibility of opening up to trade in the far future. Additionally, Mist had dispatched an envoy, led by Terumi Mei, the new female Mizukage, who wanted to form an alliance with Whirlpool's leader and begin trading with it immediately. Given that the two would gain from it and that the Namikaze wanted to pay tribute to the first 2 individuals he had ever respected outside of the Leaf, Naruto naturally agreed with Haku, hoping to realize his dream, and Naruto hoping to do the same in his own way. Zabuza wanted to restore Mist to its former splendor. Knowing that Fu could lead Naruto's forces directly to their village and crush them out of retaliation for their mistreatment of the girl, Taki sent an envoy who wished to remain neutral. Taki didn't give a damn about the village, so when Naruto asked Fu what she wanted for Taki, the 7-tailed ship shrugged. Nevertheless, it should not be disregarded because it was at a crucial spot that was closest to Iwa, with Suna being the exception. Thus, Naruto agreed to neutrality on the understanding that Taki would inform Suna and Whirlpool of Iwa's whereabouts in their region. Naruto demanded that any feces the Tsuchikage himself took in the nearby forest be documented and that they make no excuses. The Akatsuki and Orochimaru with his butt buddy Kabuto were involved in the more difficult part of the situation. Since he had stolen a lot from them, both parties were furious with him and probably wanted the Namikaze killed for all the trouble he had caused. Akatsuki's more immortal members were killed. 4 of their desired vessels were taken, their human leader was transformed into a 9-tailed fox, and they had a huge army prepared to kill any intruders without hesitation. Orochimaru wanted Naruto dead because he killed Sasuke years ago, and the Sannin would not have a Sharingan if Naruto died. Furthermore, the insane snake would want to find a way to exact revenge and murder the Namikaze if Orochimaru still felt any sort of bond with his now dead teammates after all this time. Hinata was spending time with her lover today when she noticed him studying the map of the elemental countries. "How do you want to handle Orochimaru in Sound Village, Naruto-kun?" she asked. "I want him gone right away. My army caught the leaf by surprise, but not even they can fool the snake with the same tactic, and there is always a chance Iwa will try to flank us. I have shinobi, but not enough of them as I would hope, since what I have are mostly very young children, and they have to be trained to harness their abilities. Of course, as the current Azukage, I have no doubt you'll make sure they do, and bring in a new breed of shinobi the world has ever seen," said Naruto as he observed Hinata kissing him affection. Hinata kissed him once more and was dragged into his lap, and the world will be united under our hands, she said. Naruto groped Hinata's butt, enjoying the way the woman seated on him moaned at his touch. With the help of our allies, the army, and the Ring of Power, I have no doubt it will become a reality, he said. As Naruto's hands worked their magic on her, Hinata said, I need you, feeling her longing for the Namikaze intensifying. Naruto whispered in her ear, then take me, and Hinata felt him grind her hips against his. The sounds of the lovemaking in the room caused Anko, Shizune, Yugito, and Fu to flush outside if they claimed they weren't envious of the Hyuga's enjoyment while they received nothing. They would be lying. There was something about Naruto that made them want him, and it was making them a little irritated in some ways. It wasn't that the other men in Whirlpool weren't attractive. Since the Namikaze were the last of Naruto's clans on both sides of his family, she didn't mind being used by him in that way. Kami, I wish he'd let me be his concubine. He is a lord of Whirlpool and could take me as one, Anko said. Fu stated, bring it up at the next meeting and make sure you ask his mate before then. You know how she is around him. The only way to get to be with Naruto is through her blessing, since she shared this sentiment and was aware that Hinata was the alpha female of all of them. Shizune heard another cry of pleasure and said, maybe we should return later when they finish, which made her heart race. Yugito remarked, if they ever finish. I once waited 2 hours for them to end their romp together, as she required more than one maid to satisfy the demon inside of her that called Naruto an alpha male. After Yugito shook her head, Anko remarked, maybe we'll get luck and this will be a quickie, before her blush slightly reddened. Yugito remarked, that 2-hour wait was the quickie, as their blushes deepened. Knowing that they might be here for a while, Anko asked, so should we wait with playing a deck of cards? With the cries of delight resonating inside, Fu pointed to the closed doors and asked, do you think it's possible to play a card game through that? Point taken, Anko said, aware that it was nearly impossible to play any game while listening to the two foxes fight. Unless you were a monk who was fervently promoting celibacy. The sounds of Naruto and Hinata getting it on had stopped after a few hours, and a few minutes later, the Hyuga woman opened the double doors. She had a glow about her that made her appear like a walking 200-watt light bulb. Maintaining what was arguably the second best poker face in comparison to Naruto's, Hinata gestured for the jealous woman to go into the Namikaze's office and start reporting on the state of his nation's progress. After 3 weeks, Sound Village, Kabuto knelt down in front of Orochimaru and said, Orochimaru-sama, we may have a problem? With obedience. Orochimaru asked, what problem? After noticing his second-in-command's tense expression. When Kabuto noticed Orochimaru narrowing his yellow snake eyes at him, he said, several outposts have gone silent and we have been unable to reach any of them by our usual means of communication. Fortunately, Orochimaru was able to find suitable bodies to replace his last one and partially make up for losing Uchiha Sasuke. That isn't just a problem, Kabuto, it means someone is moving in against us and we need to leave this base now should it become compromised by whoever is trying to wipe out my bases, he said. Soon after, there was an explosion from above, followed by shouting and the sounds of death coming down on the base. The two agents of chaos left Sound and headed for the hidden escape route out of the village, only to discover that they were encircled by an entire army of elves, Fu, Han, and Naruto, who were all grinning at the startled snake Sannin. When Naruto noticed the Sannin giving him a hateful glare, he said, hello Orochimaru, how are you? I'm going to crush you for killing Sasuke-kun. Do you realize what you cost me? All the planning needed to make Sasuke-kun my new vessel. How long it took to wait for just the right moment to mark him with my curse seal and push his mind to the brink of madness? Orochimaru drew Kusanagi out of. Naruto saw Orochimaru's eyes flash with anger, but it was brief and insufficient to indicate that he truly missed the two other Sannin. That's it? You're only angry for that? You don't care I killed Jiraiya and Tsunade? Your former teammates no less? Naruto asked. Seeing Naruto laugh, Orochimaru exclaimed, it doesn't matter because they would have died eventually at my hands. Naruto said to Han, and people in the leaf called me a demon. You can see the irony here, right? Han simply nodded in agreement before turning back to Kabuto and Orochimaru. When Kabuto noticed that the elves had swords drawn and arrows ready to be fired from bows at the same time, he asked, how did you get to us so quickly with this army? Naruto pulled out his sword and covered it with his chakra to create an unholy flame. Elves are great at stealth. Whether they wear armor or not, they can even shoot you in the darkest of night if they wanted, he said. Orochimaru rushed Naruto as Kabuto pursued Fu and they started fighting. You may defeat us, boy, but the world will not stand for your actions, and will untie to kill you along with all your followers, he said. Unlikely, Naruto thought, since he was easily outperforming the man in the art form and knew that swordplay was the Sannin's weakest weapon. Fu's spear skills proved to be extremely dangerous for the medic Nin, and Kabuto discovered that she was not to be taken lightly either. The seven-tailed vessel smirked at the man's frustration. Fu was too fast for Kabuto to use chakra scalpels on him, and the spear she used had already seriously damaged his ribs and left a hole in his shoulder that almost severed his right arm. As Orochimaru attempted to use his weapon to poison Naruto, the Namikaze simply dodged the stab motions as if they were insignificant, which only infuriated the Sannin. When he attempted to switch with Kabuto, an elf fired an arrow, striking Kabuto in the knee and causing Orochimaru to instinctively jump back. Simply by doing this, he was able to divert his attention long enough to allow Naruto to regain striking distance and remove the Sannin's sword arm. In contrast to his battle with the third Hokage, the human-turned-demonic fox simply spun around, grabbing the weapon by the hilt before throwing his own weapon. Sannin, the snake, leapt away from Naruto and attempted to strike the Namikaze down with his remaining hand by using his connection with Kusanagi. Just as he had done with the Sandaime, Orochimaru was taken aback when the blade struck his heart, carrying the weapon all the way to the hilt, covered in demonic chakra, consuming the Sannin's vital organ that was necessary for his survival. Orochimaru, who was crying in agony as death gripped him, noticed that Kabuto was not getting any better and watched as Fu used her spear in the same way that Naruto had. Fu's own demonic chakra was preventing the second-in-command's body from healing his wounds normally, and he was on his knees, wishing he could scream in agony, but he was unable to do so because the spear had already pierced his chest before Kabuto's head was sliced clean off his body by a swift pull, out, and fluent spin. Fu remarked, "So far so good," as she washed her spear and Naruto washed his sword and sealed Kusanagi away. Naruto said to Han, "Yes, tell the rest of the army to advance on sound, burn it down." Han nodded and guided the elves to the soon-to-be demolished village. As he had ordered, the Sound Village was completely destroyed by fire, leaving only the ashes to blow into the wind. Naruto slept soundly after relocating several miles away from the exact devastation he had ordered, until his senses told him that someone, or rather, a few people, was approaching him while feigning sleep. Naruto's army was awakened by making a bird sound and sending a tiny pulse from his ring throughout the encampment. The army only got ready for battle when the intruders arrived. "You sure about this, Itachi?" Kisame asked, gazing at elves brandishing swords and bows and arrows pointed at various body parts. The smallest movement from either Akatsuki member would have killed them both in a single heartbeat. "It reminded me of being in Mist again," Itachi remarked. "You said it yourself. Kisame, better to be by the side devil than be in his path, and I would prefer not to be in his path," as he observed Naruto waiting for the one act necessary for this one-sided battle to begin, with Han and Fu at his ready. Naruto saw Itachi take a single step forward and heard the faint sound of rope stretching back a fraction. "Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame, two member of the Akatsuki organization, your leader must think you are very capable of completing suicidal missions if he just sent the two of you," Naruto said. The archers in the Namikaze's army could be heard echoing. Itachi knelt down in front of Naruto and Kisame gradually followed suit. "We are not here to fight you, Namikaze Naruto, we are here to serve," Itachi said. "Liar," Naruto said plainly. Itachi said, "No, we speak the truth. I have proof. This scroll," and he produced a sealed scroll, rolling it gently to the area between the two. Naruto eyed the sealed scroll bearing the Sandaime symbol and asked, "How'd I know this won't explode? How'd I know this isn't a trap you created to trap me?" Itachi explained, "Because deep down you trust me, Naruto, just as you trusted me to guard you all those years ago. When growing up I was the only Uchiha ever trusted, since he had done everything in his power to stop assassination attempts and beatings the Konoha residents tried on the once alone boy." Fu nodded her head and watched the two intently as Naruto said, "If he tries anything, kill them both, no hesitation in firing, got it?" Naruto approached the scroll slowly, picked it up, and opened it to reveal the contents that would demonstrate Itachi's devotion to him. Naruto's eyes gradually widened as he read the covert mission the Sandaime had given Itachi to spy on the Akatsuki and inform Jiraiya of the organization's activities in pursuing the tailed beasts in order to extract them for an unidentified grand scheme. The scroll contained information about the individuals involved, the locations of the bases, the demons that were taken out, and the sequence in which they had to be taken out of their bodies. The names of his now deceased godparents caused Naruto to snort. "As you can see, I was a loyal agent of Konoha, but the only people who even knew of this were the Sandaime and Jiraiya, though I don't know if Tsunade was told," Itachi said. "I doubt it if she did. Then it was beneath her to inform me, and anyone else that should have known besides. Neither of them cared about my life before, and I don't care about them either now that they're dead, seeing as you two have nowhere to go. I take it you want to join me, and bring a form of stability to the world," said Naruto as he observed Itachi and Kisame the same. As he watched Naruto frown at him and heard Itachi sigh and mutter something that sounded like, "Idiot," Kisame remarked, "I might be bloodthirsty at times, but I'm not an idiot when it comes to facing you, kid, and I would be an idiot to stick with the losing side." Naruto saw Kisame pondering for a moment before responding, and he said, "I see, and how do I ensure your loyalty beyond the now when the world is no longer at such a state of unrest?" Seeing that Naruto was not amused, Kisame asked, "A good dental plan?" Naruto said, "Come here, Kisame, I think I have a way," after observing Kisame's hesitation to do so. When Kisame saw Naruto shake his head no, he asked, "You're not going to kill me, are you?" Naruto saw Kisame approach him, but it was obvious the shark man was anxious. "If I wanted to kill you, Kisame, I would have ordered the elves to shoot you with enough arrows to turn you into an early morning meal, and taken your sword to the Mizukage to collect your bounty," Naruto said. Kisame exclaimed, "Okay, so what do you want to hey?" as Naruto swiftly used his right hand to seize the shark man's face and activated the Ring of Power. Uchiha Itachi stood motionless behind the former seven swordsmen of the mist, watching as Kisame's face was engulfed in demonic energy and Naruto's ring finger gleamed in the dense fog like the lighthouse's light. No matter how hard the shark man tried to free the Namikaze's hand from his face, it remained in place, despite Kisame's best efforts. Kisame finally stopped flailing and appeared to go limp while Naruto continued to hold the man's head before releasing his grip and causing the swordsman to fall to the ground. Itachi briefly believed Naruto had killed Kisame and pondered whether that was what was in store for him now. However, Kisame rose from the ground after a few moments of kissing, his eyes now glassy, and he bowed to Naruto. Naruto said, "Welcome to the fold, Kisame-san," without further explanation. Kisame said, "I live to serve Naruto-sama," and then his eyes stopped being glassy and he smiled. When Naruto saw the Uchiha get up from where he was lying on the ground and approach him, he said, "Great rise, Itachi, I trust you." "Just like that?" Itachi questioned with suspicion. Naruto remarked, "Yes, just like that. If you were really trying to trick me upon arriving here, you would have sprung the trap already, or tried to stop Kisame's full conversion to my side," as he watched Itachi give a nod in agreement with that rationality. "What now?" Itachi asked, observing the army surrounding him carefully putting their weapons away. Naruto saw a look of relief on Itachi's face as he said, "First, we're going to destroy Iwa completely. However, that mission is not the one I have for you, and the one I do have requires more in terms of diplomacy. I'm sending you to Spring Country to bring about an alliance and trade agreement with Whirlpool at the same time. I need you to change the minds of her advisors since they were loyalty to the Leaf, and are no doubt pressuring her even now to make war with me." When Kisame saw Naruto shake his head no, he asked, "Am I going with him?" "No, your appearance will bring fear where it is not needed. You assist in Iwa's invasion and flood the village with water like I know you can. We're going to turn Village of Stone into the Village of Mud. Once the area is filled with water, you're going to attack them with it, and when the time is right the army will move in to kill them all," said Naruto when he noticed Kisame raising an afterthought that was going through his mind. "No prisoners?" Kisame asked, unsure if the entire Iwa would be destroyed, not just the adults or the buildings. "My wife and maid Hinata nod in agreement as Naruto states, the children will be spared and relocated. Civilian children will go to Wave Country and children from shinobi families will go to Whirlpool to be properly trained by the Azukage." Sailors on the ships that traded with Whirlpool saw many children, but none of them appeared to be the adults, leading them to question whether they were orphans, just like he did with the Leaf, Itachi thought. Itachi's suspicions about what happened to the Konoha children were only strengthened by the plan to deal with Iwa. Nevertheless, it was a noble and sensible plan that gave the kids a reason to live while preventing their deaths. A strategy Itachi could support, knowing that the sooner, the better. Itachi asked, "When do I leave?" Naruto handed Itachi the special Whirlpool emblem and gestured for some of his men to bring over some extra armor and a helmet meant more for the elves. "Now the sooner the better. Head to the port slightly southeast of here in Fire Country where my fleet is docked. Take this with you by wearing this special emblem on your shoulders. It shows proof to everyone that you are one of my loyal subordinates, and that I trust you. When you find the ship you want, tell its captain to set a course for Spring Country while sailing under diplomatic flags and keep things civil." However, given that it was superior to the Akatsuki cloak and had over his previous Leaf Anbu uniform, Itachi still looked good in it at the moment. Furthermore, rather than being immediately put to death, this gave the Uchiha an opportunity to meet the daimyo of Spring Country and was more of a disguise for Itachi than a complete wardrobe change. Itachi bowed and said, "I won't fail you, my lord," before heading off to his destination. Naruto said, "I know, just do your best, that's all I ask of my subordinates," as he watched Itachi disappear into the surrounding forest shadows. Kisame stated, "The remaining Akatsuki won't go down without a fight, Naruto-sama." knowing that the group's surviving members would be challenging to defeat and might cause significant casualties for the new Kyuubi's army. As Kisame nodded in comprehension, Naruto remarked, "I know that's why when we confront them, we have to make sure they're all dead, and stay dead long after it's over." Kisame grinned and said, "I can do that," anticipating the fight. Naruto said, "I know you will," since he had already planned to use his hands to bring peace to the elemental countries and fight the last of the Akatsuki. Currently, Whirlpool, so you all wish to be with my Naruto-kun, am I hearing you correctly? Hinata asked, observing the four women in her office nodding their heads respectfully, each of them appearing slightly embarrassed by the question but equally determined. According to Yugito, Hinata narrowed her eyes at the four of them. "We felt it was best to speak to you first about this Azukage-sama since you were his maid after all," Yugito said. Under her eyes, Hinata saw the women growing more anxious. "You should know I don't like the idea of sharing my mate with anyone. It makes me feel like I'm not enough for my mate and someone else is required to pick up the slack," she said, tapping the arm rest of her chair gently with a clawed finger. Fu saw Hinata's eyes glaze over when the words, "pregnant with his child," were spoken, and it didn't take a genius to realize that the Hyuga's grand dream was to have Naruto's child before the woman snapped out of her dream state. It's not that at all Uzukage-sama, it's just with Naruto-sama being the feudal lord of Whirlpool, it is expected of him to have more than one lover, and with all due respect the man will have certain needs after you become pregnant with his child, Fu said. As she returned to finishing the day's required paperwork, Hinata said, "I see. Well, I can certainly understand that since my Naruto-kun is a man after all, and with me being pregnant would block any kind of release he may require. I will take your words under advisement and speak to him about the idea upon his return." Dismissed. She discussed with the Hanabi who were still in Isengard the possibility of re-establishing their clan within their still slowly expanding shinobi village when they grew older. It wouldn't be difficult to bring them together because Hinata had witnessed how her younger sister gazed at Konohamaru. Additionally, since the boy was the last of his clan, it wouldn't be a problem if Moegi also developed feelings for the young Sarutobi. Since Naruto was now caring for the status of a feudal lord and each daimyo had multiple female companions outside of his wife to ensure that at least one child of their family bloodline was alive, it actually made Hinata realize that allowing Naruto to have others attached to them wasn't all that bad of an idea either. Even though neither of the four women expressed it, it was obvious that they wanted to be with Naruto for all the right reasons. When they approached her about it, it would be unkind of her to deny these women their feelings because they were similar to her own love for the Namikaze. She would undoubtedly discuss this with Naruto at a later time. 1 week later, Iwa, because his village had been destroyed by the same person who destroyed their rival village and by the son of their most vilified enemy from the last war, the Tsuchikage had every right to be afraid. The fact that Roshi, Han, and Hoshigaki Kisame were assisting in the siege of the village with an army in tow made it even more terrifying. Even though each shinobi was a one-man army, having a real army made matters worse, especially since 2 of the 3 shinobi knew every detail of the village. No outside force could flank them, no escape route was available for his forces, and no secret surprise could be used against the opposition. This concludes Iwa's story, and it happened under my supervision. How could things have gone so horribly wrong? As the Tsuchikage observed from the summit of his cage tower, he soon became aware of a presence behind him. Drenched in the blood of several now dead Iwa shinobi, Naruto calmly pulled out his beloved glaive from his time back in Middle-earth and asked, "Any regrets you wish to speak of before you die?" When Naruto nodded, the Tsuchikage said, "No, but could I ask you one question?" "What's the question?" Naruto asked plaintively. The Tsuchikage saw Naruto grinning and asked, "What did I do wrong? What could I have done to cause me to lose everything?" Naruto asked, "Do you really not see it? Are you that blind?" After noticing the Tsuchikage appeared momentarily reluctant to speak. The Tsuchikage remarked, "I must be thinking, I can't see why Roshi and Han left Iwa for you," after observing Naruto shake his head. Naruto saw the Tsuchikage grimace and undoubtedly attempted to hide the truth. "It's because you treated Han and Roshi like mindless weapons meant to just do your bidding. They didn't want a life like that, nor did they deserve it," Naruto said. "Demon vessels are meant to be one thing and one thing only. Weapons of war to be used to wipe out our enemies. That is how things have been since before I was even born, according to the Tsuchikage. And yet Tsuchikage, here we are, the leaf is now gone. Iwa is soon to join it, and all because of one very simple if not almost identical act done by both villages. You have both hated us for what we were, even if we had been made by you all the same, and made our lives very miserable without remorse while thinking that we live only to serve cruel masters like yourself," said Naruto as the Tsuchikage continued to resist what was true. The Tsuchikage undoubtedly retorted, You make it sound as if your kind actually deserves to be treated with respect just like any other normal human beings. You're not. You're just monsters. Monsters humans had created, and like anything else we create we can destroy. However, the man was quickly forced to his knees and silenced by a diagonal slice made by the glaive, which left a nasty deep gash on the cage's torso. That's if we were born monsters. We are humans turned into monsters and therefore are immune to dying at the hands of our so-called creators, responsible for making us this way. You only have yourselves to blame. When you see my godparents in hell, tell them I said hello, and thanks for nothing, said Naruto prior to removing the Tsuchikages from his body. Han said, Iwa has fallen Naruto-sama, as he appeared behind Naruto and noticed the Tsuchikage's lifeless body. Good, find out where the children are, blindfold them all, and quietly escort them to the transports we have that will take them to our temporary base near Takifu. Will be there to meet and assist you in taking them through that area to the ports that will take them either to Wave or Whirlpool, said Naruto as Han nodded before executing the directive. Now that Iwa had been destroyed, there was only one final danger to Naruto, his partner, and the stability of the elemental countries. The Akatsuki was its name. Additionally, Kisame claimed that their headquarters was in aim and prepared for an attack. A week later, Akatsuki Headquarters 1 Pain declared, Itachi and Kisame have betrayed Akatsuki, after observing Konan, Zetsu, and Uchiha Madara surreptitiously posing as Tobi. When Konan saw Pain nod, he asked, is this confirmed information? What spies we have left working for us have seen Uchiha Itachi speaking to the Spring Country daimyo wearing the armor of Whirlpool, and Kisame was seen assisting in the destruction of Iwa. They no longer wear the cloaks, hats, and rings of the Akatsuki. Pain reported that Zetsu was getting anxious as well as Konan as well. Konan asked, what should we do, Pain-sama? After noticing that Pain was thinking deeply. Pain said, I don't know, the only thing that comes to mind is become dormant until the time is right to strike and take down the Kyuubi vessel when he least suspects it. Just before the meeting room erupted in a loud explosion. We're being attacked, Zetsu's white half exclaimed in a terrified tone. Everyone for themselves, exclaimed Zetsu's darker side in a similarly frantic manner. As Naruto entered the room with Fu, Kisame, Itachi, Roshi, Han Yugito, and a diverse army of fighters prepared to kill the opposition at any time, he asked, am I interrupting or can anyone join this meeting? Pain narrowed his Rinnegan eyes and said, you. Naruto grinned back and pulled out his sword. As he watched the orange mask wearing Akatsuki member with one eye hole attempt to leave the group, Naruto exclaimed, what? You were expecting Santa Claus? The Easter Bunny perhaps? Itachi said, don't bother Madara, they know and are prepared for your attempt to escape. Same with you, Zetsu, as he watched Madara's form slightly stiffen before gradually taking off his mask to show them his face. Madara sneered, of course they know, you told them about me, Itachi, as his Sharingan came to life and he fixed Naruto with his gaze. Naruto said, don't bother trying, Madara, I'm immune to your attempts to manipulate me with your eyes, and so are the others, after he had taken steps to negate such a power by creating a special shield over them with the Ring of Power. Madara frowned with his sword drawn. Madara prepared to attack the Namikaze. I will rule this world, boy, all will bow to me as they should have when I fought Senju Hiroshima for the right to be Hokage, and there is nothing you can do to stop my dream from becoming reality, he declared. When they nodded, Naruto yelled, full focus on the others, Madara is mine, and charged them as the Namikaze pursued the oldest Uchiha in the world. Madara and Naruto engaged in a violent altercation with their chakras clashing and creating dimensional friction between them. Both of them were staring their enemy in the eyes. Their power clashes shook the spacious room as the two titans of rage and power battled each other, determined to be the stronger of the two. It seemed as though nothing else mattered. The ground, the walls, and fragments of the ceiling above were all destroyed as their chakra swung out at everything in its path. Madara attempted to breach Naruto's defenses but was unsuccessful, and his opponent simply smiled at him as if it were a game. You won't win, boy, I will become the one true god of this world, even Kami and the Shinigami will bow to my will, he exclaimed. As Madara grew more irate and made every effort to crush the Namikaze, despite knowing that the demon would reappear in a few years, Naruto said, what is it with you arrogant Uchiha and the desire to become a god? I must be the best at everything? I am the superior being. And all will tremble at my feet. Gets annoying. Are you sure you're not compensating for something? The Uchiha was kicked away into the statue that was supposed to contain all 9 demons after Naruto saw an opening and grabbed it, cutting both of his hands at the wrists. Gaara, the younger brother of the Raikage, and the 3-tailed beast swimming in the ocean, the strongest of the 9-tailed beasts, saw that this thing posed a serious threat to his generals and decided it was time to remove the main component of the Akatsuki's schemes with explosive tags fastened to the arrows. Naruto signaled his archers to fire at the statue, and soon hundreds of arrows were flying through the air at the demonic creature. Madara gazed at the hissing arrows, anticipating the moment when they would explode and demolish the statue. The Uchiha leapt away, barely escaping the blast, but as soon as he was out of reach, he appeared behind him, practically covered in demonic chakra. This isn't possible. This was not intended to occur. Madara tried to think of a way to protect himself, but it was too late. Naruto struck the man's face with his sword, severing his entire body as the demonic chakra destroyed the remaining oldest Uchiha. Conan exclaimed, "The statue! It's gone!" After the lone beast they had captured had been set free, its spirit soaring from the room to appear somewhere else. When Naruto saw the man glaring at him with hatred, he directed his other paths to the Namikaze and asked, "So is the leader calling the shots in the shadows, right, Pain?" Pain saw Naruto shake his head and remarked, "We would have changed the world for the better. No more war, no more suffering, no more needless death. And what about the death of myself and the others? Wouldn't our deaths be unnecessary? Wouldn't those who care about us be in pain and suffering? Why not sacrifice people who are terminally ill so we survive the extraction? Why not use ruthless criminals who are conscious instead of just us? You say you don't want any more wars, but what you're doing is preparing for one big war, and it could kill everyone. I don't know about you, but I'd rather not rule over dead people since it takes the fun out of things, and I like to have fun all the time," Naruto said as the various paths charged him, but were flanked by the others. Conan was unable to use her paper ability properly because of the enormous wave of water that Kisame threw at her. When it began, the swordsman's weapon swiftly cut Zetsu in half, and he was just forgotten, so poor Zetsu never even had a chance to fight. Naruto's words, "You are beaten, surrender now and I will grant you a position in Whirlpool worthy of your abilities. I do not wish to kill you since it is clear your goals are noble if just a bit misguided," came as he saw Conan unsure and Pain glaring defiantly. Pain charged Naruto, saying, "I won't be your slave. I am a god and a god does not follow someone like you." However, the Namikaze moved more quickly and used his right hand to grab him by the face. After saying, "I'm sorry you feel that way. In another lifetime, we could have been brothers, or at least close cousins. I sense that much from you from my mother's side." Naruto channeled demonic chakra into his hand and arm before using his power to obliterate Pain. When the attack's power reached the source of the six Pains, it killed the man behind them all. It did this by traveling through the invisible connection that the real Pain had over the others. Now Conan was all that remained. "He's gone, he's gone," Conan exclaimed as she fell to her knees upon witnessing the other paths fall, indicating that the real Pain had indeed passed away. Naruto walked towards the woman, who now looked up and saw his sad eyes. "I'm sorry, I really am. I can tell by your sorrow that he was special," Naruto said. Conan sobbed as she said, "He just wanted to make the world stop this ridiculous fighting for power," and Naruto knelt down in front of her. "I know, as I said, your intentions were pure, but the means to make them reality were not, and it was why you failed. However, if you side with me, we can make that dream a reality, and bring about the peace long dreamed for. You are the only one capable of bringing the people of AIM together now, and together we can finally bring peace to the elemental countries," said Naruto as he watched Conan stare at him for a moment and then give a nod of agreement. Conan took the back of his ring hand and kissed it to demonstrate her newfound devotion. "Anything you wish of me I will do, Naruto-sama," she said. Naruto said, "Thank you, Conan. Now, let's get out of here, and prepare. AIM for the ground-shaking news you're going to deliver," as the woman nodded and the two stood up. Conan replied, "Yes, Naruto-sama, aware that an announcement would need to be made shortly." Epilogue. The elemental countries had been relatively peaceful for a number of years after the last few surviving members were exterminated. Yes, there were isolated incidents of fighting, but nothing that would have ignited a major conflict to put an end to it. Together with the Leaf, Iwa, and Sound villages, the other shinobi villages had made peace with one another and found equilibrium in Naruto's creation following the destruction of the Akatsuki organization. In order to discuss Naruto's motivations for destroying these three villages, the feudal lords of the elemental countries were permitted to visit Whirlpool. Many daimyo were taken aback by the feudal lords' actions in establishing trade rights and amicable alliance-based relationships with Naruto when they all returned to their respective nations. They had essentially granted Naruto enormous power over the elemental countries, and he had a number of his supporters in charge of specific areas within each daimyo's court. Many were unaware that Naruto had utilized the Ring of Power to subjugate the gullible daimyos, with the exception of the Spring Country daimyo, who were shielded from its influence. After meeting Uchiha Itachi during his diplomatic mission there, she fell in love with him, and Itachi acknowledged that the woman was truly exceptional in her own right. Thus, Naruto not only permitted the marriage to take place but also witnessed it and wished the couple a happy union. When Naruto, The feudal lord of Whirlpool wasn't in charge of Whirlpool. He had discovered that 6 attractive women were lying on his bed. Later, Yugito, Fu, Anko, Shizune, and Tamari were all in agreement with her decision to marry him politically. At first, Naruto was a little hesitant, not because of Tamari per se, but rather because Gaara used her as a tool to strengthen the alliance between Suna and Whirlpool and maintain a closer bond between the two sides. Tamari, on the other hand, had volunteered voluntarily, knowing that any other female shinobi would view it as a mission, and she had admitted to Naruto that she had liked him. Tamari didn't because of this. It was decided after talking to Hinata that Tamari would join the other girls who wanted to be Naruto's lovers and become one of his small group of concubinessa, the official term given that he had already married Hinata. The other girls were frantically trying to have children of their own, but they wanted to space out the times their fellow sisters were pregnant so they wouldn't deprive their stud of a lover of being satisfied while they were carrying his child. Hinata was still pregnant with their third child, having already given birth to twin sons. Anko was 6 months along with what she claimed felt like a girl, and Shizune was 3 months. It would be unkind, Naruto said, you spoil me, as his 3 lovers on the right and his pregnant lovers on the left held him tenderly. Hinata embraced him and kissed his cheek, saying, you more than earned it. The twins screamed for one of their parents to come see them in the adjacent room, and Naruto could only chuckle since he would be the one caring for them. After kissing each of his girls and saying, the twins are calling, I don't want to be a bad father and neglect them, Naruto got out of bed in his bathrobe and went to see how his kids were doing. Hinata remarked, you'll never be a bad father, Naruto-kun, you're perfect. As Naruto paused at the door and grinned back at her before he went to check on the twins, Naruto said, it's because I have all of you here in my heart, not this on my finger. He felt finally complete after everything that had happened to him.